Chapter 1229. But I do have the cultivation method, but the disciples have become a problem. A Shanghuaming am a small sect. Without absolute strength, I can't compete with the big sections. I can't compete with the big sects for disciples. Compared to other small sects, Shanghuaming not only has stricter standards for selecting disciples, but we also lack spiritual herbs and medicinal pills. Compared to the 10,000 Poisons sect, which is rich and has many disciples, Shanghuaming really can't compare. Then he glanced at Gong Mingwei and the other two, then at Xiaohua, and said kindly, although Yellow Flower Ridge is a spiritual vein, it's still far from being comparable to a real heavenly abode. I've been working hard to plant spiritual herbs and refine medicinal pills these years, but before I found Xiaohua, I didn't have any achievements. After Xiaohua came, I focused on taking care of the herb garden. Only then did I have the time to study medicinal pills. I have some gains, but to take out some Peiyuan pill to help you improve your magic power and realm like the 10,000 Poison sect, I still can't do it. Fables are unworthy. Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao were ashamed. Xiao Yuehong also let them take care of the herb garden, but they only wanted to practice the cultivation method and didn't care about other things. Of course, they made a mess, and in the end Xiao Yuehong had to do it himself. There's nothing wrong with concentrating on cultivating the cultivation method. Everyone has their own fate. Even if we let Xiaohua cultivate the cultivation method, he won't be able to cultivate it. It's better to let him take care of the medicine garden. Xiao Yuehong waved his hand. Yes, sect master is right. Xiaohua knew Xiao Yuehong's painstaking efforts. He also practiced Shanghuaming's cultivation method and knew the problems he encountered in practicing it. He nodded in agreement. However, Xiaohua asked again, by the way, sect master, what kind of spiritual herbs are needed to refine the Peiyuan pill? Do we have them in our garden? Oh, the main ingredient of the Peiyuan pill is the absorption fruit. Although it's rare, I have it in my herb garden. That's strange. That absorption fruit, disciple has seen it before. Although it's not much, it's not little. Why doesn't sect master refine the Peiyuan pill? Xiaohua asked. Hehe, you only know one thing but not the other, Xiaohua. Xiao Yuehong stroked his beard and said with a smile, alchemy is an extremely important subject. It's as important as cultivating a mental cultivation method. If you don't have profound attainments, you definitely won't be able to successfully refine medicinal pills. I have some attainments in the field of alchemy. That's why the Wu Tsong pill I concoct is so effective that it's only available in E-City. On the other hand, to concoct the Peiyuan pill, not only does one require profound alchemy skills, one also needs an even older assimilation fruit. Ah? Xiaohua came to a realization and asked again, then, I'm afraid that the absorption fruits in our garden have been around for 10 years. Isn't that enough? How can 10 years be enough? I'm afraid that even 20 or 30 years won't be enough. Xiao Yuehong smiled bitterly. That long? Xiaohua exclaimed, then who can grow it? Hee, pitiful child. The spirit grasses in our medicine garden are only used to refine ordinary medicinal pills. The spirit grasses used to refine the Peiyuan pill are all specially planted by large sects using special methods or special places. Or they're harvested from deep mountains and marshes where no one has ever stepped foot on them. The absorption fruits used to refine the Peiyuan pill aren't too demanding. However, the exquisite grass used to refine the foundation establishment pill requires a medicinal age of over 300 years. Xiaohua was flabbergasted. 300 years. It seems that the age of the 5 people in front of him added together is longer than that. This exquisite grass really isn't something that ordinary people can grow. Therefore, there's an old saying in the cultivation world of the Dawn Rain continent. Qi refining is easy, foundation establishment is hard. That's how it is. Xiao Yuehong sighed and said, from the late stage of qi refining to the early stage of foundation establishment, the amount of true qi required isn't something that can be provided by ordinary refining of spiritual energy. One can only rely on external objects to greatly increase the amount of true qi in the meridians in the body. Only then can one push one's cultivation to break through the shackles of the realm. There are many kinds of external objects like this. Taking the foundation establishment pill is the most common and most effective kind. Master, the exquisite grass used to refine the foundation establishment pill requires a medicinal age of 300 years. It's really hard to find. Is it possible that there are other things. After taking the parasol pill, Zhang Qingxiao was full of energy. Hearing her master talk about foundation establishment, her heart itched even more and she couldn't help but ask. Sai, the exquisite grass is a spiritual grass of heaven and earth. It absorbs the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and grows for hundreds of years. It contains the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within the grass and then adds other spiritual grasses to refine the foundation establishment pill. The medicinal properties of the foundation establishment pill are mild and the spiritual energy entering the body is also slow. It's precisely walking the path of righteousness. For us cultivators, it's the most orthodox method and there won't be any special side effects. As for other external objects, for example directly taking rare and aged spiritual grasses, due to the lack of other supplementary herbs, there might be some toxicity. It might also harm the meridians. Just like ordinary people, if they eat cooked food, of course it's delicious. If they eat it raw, it might not taste good and they might even have diarrhea. Ha ha ha, Xiao Yuehong's explanation was very profound and simple, making Zhang Qingxiao almost laugh out loud. Sick master. You said to eat vegetables then. Is there anyone who eats meat? Xiao Hua on the side also asked with a smile. This, Xiao Yuehong muttered, looked at Xiao Hua and said, according to the sect's ancient records, a long time ago, there was... There's really people who eat meat. How do they eat it? The four people's eyes lit up and looked at Xiao Yuehong in surprise. It's said that in this world, people aren't the only ones who can cultivate. There are many creatures such as wild beasts, trees and so on. They all have their own cultivation methods. Since spiritual grasses can be refined into pills, those wild beasts can naturally also... Xiao Hua listened and his mouth opened wide as if he thought of something. What's wrong? Xiao Yuehong said curiously, this is also recorded in the sect's ancient records. Master has never seen it with his own eyes. Oh, nothing. Although there was some surprise and excitement in Xiao Hua's eyes, he still didn't say anything. It's said that when some people build their foundation, they use the inner cores of demonic beasts to cultivate. They can also obtain a large amount of spiritual qi from the inner cores, which can be used to advance their cultivation. However, this spiritual qi is refined by demonic beasts, which is different from what we humans refine. It's very easy for problems to arise. Therefore, over time it gradually disappeared. Speaking up to here, Xiao Yuehong looked around Yellow Flower Ridge in disappointment and said, unfortunately in my Yellow Flower Ridge, there are only trees and trees. I don't see any rare things. Even if Master wants to get a demonic beast's inner core to advance your cultivation, it's impossible. Xiao Hua listened and a strange expression appeared on his face. Okay, Master won't say anymore. You're only at the 10th layer of qi refining, there's still a long way to go to the 12th layer of qi refining. Once you reach the peak of qi refining, Master will tell you everything in detail. If I tell you now, it'll become a burden. Xiao Yuehong waved his hand and said, you wait. Pack up and immediately go to the peaceful heart cave on Lone Staff Peak. Xiao Hua, you also go, supervise them. Yes, sect master. Xiao Hua bowed and saluted. Xiao Yuehong turned around and was about to leave when he suddenly remembered something. He frowned and asked, also, just now you said that there were several 9th layer qi refining cultivators and one 11th layer qi refining cultivator in the 10,000 Poisons sect. You only 3 10th layer qi refining cultivators. How did you escape so easily? This. When Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao heard this, their faces changed color. Xiao Xinrui lowered her head slightly, a trace of red appearing on her face. Master, we're easy? Can't you see how injured your disciple is? Zhang Qingxiao braced herself and said, less nonsense, hurry up and say it. Otherwise you'll have to reflect on your mistakes for 200 days. Xiao Yuehong sneered. Master, it's like this. Gong Mingwei saw that Master was really angry again, so he glanced at Xiao Xinrui and said, when we were buying the Peacock Fantasy for Junior Sister, we met the young master of the 100 Herbs sect, Jiang Fan. It was because he was against us that the price of the Peacock Fantasy was raised so high. Tell me the important things. Xiao Yuehong glared at him and scolded. Yes, master. Actually, when we were fighting against 100 Poisons sect, we were at a disadvantage. But, for some reason Jiang Fan actually led his disciples to help us. That's why we didn't suffer too much. The 100 Herbs sect? Jiang Jiantong? I've only met him a few times and we don't have a deep friendship. Xiao Yuehong was puzzled, but he didn't notice Xiao Xinrui's blush, nor did he notice the unnatural expressions on Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao's faces. Forget it, I, Shang Huaming, owe the 100 Herbs sect a favor. When the time is right I'll pay them back. Xiao Yuehong waved his hand. Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao sighed softly, but Xiao Xinrui looked disappointed. The Lone Staff Peak was a relatively remote mountain in the north of Yellowflower Ridge. There weren't any nearby peaks and the climate here was different from the other peaks. Not only was the wind very strong but the temperature was also much lower. If Gong Mingwei and the other two weren't Qi practitioners of the 10th level, they would have easily reached the top of the Lone Staff Peak. Even so, when the three of them entered the tranquil cave of the Lone Staff Peak, they were surprised by the coldness and the cold wind that blew in from time to time. Xiao Xinrui circulated her vital energy through her meridians to force out the bone-chilling cold. She sighed and said, "Is this a place for humans to stay? So hard. Junior sister, we have to stay here for 100 days. Zhang Qingxiao screamed. Senior brothers, the sect leader sent you here. I'm afraid there's a deeper meaning behind it. Xiao Hua followed the three of them into the tranquil cave. He had never heard of this place before and had never been here before. He couldn't help but shrink back and smile. Xiao Hua, it's easy for you to say that. It's not like you're the one who's reflecting on your mistakes in the tranquil cave. Why don't we switch places? Let's see if I can make such sarcastic remarks, Zhang Qingxiao said unhappily. Little junior brother, Xiao Xinrui said with a smile. If you like this work you're welcome to vote for it on Qidian. Com. Chapter 1230. I senior sister, please don't call me that. Sect master has never accepted me into the sect. It's not appropriate for you to call me that. Xiao Hua felt that something was wrong and immediately denied it. Father hasn't chased you down the mountain for so long. Naturally, he has the intention of accepting you into the sect. You just need to cultivate slowly. If 10 years isn't enough, 20 years and you still can't reach the 3rd level of Qi refining? So, you are destined to be my junior brother. Xiao Xinrui didn't agree. She understood that if it wasn't for the strange custom of Xiaoyu continent, Xiao Hua would have already been accepted into the sect. Forget it, senior sister. Don't say anything useless. Just say what you want to say. Xiao Hua bitterly smiled. Yeah, it's nothing. However, it's so cold here. Senior sister and your 2 senior brothers. Don't freeze. What pills do you have? Can you lend us a few? Don't, senior sister. Sect master hasn't given any orders. I don't dare to casually agree. Xiao Hua shook his head like a rattle. Stingy, Xiao Xinrui stomped her feet and stole a glance at Zhang Qingxiao. My back hurts. Little junior brother. Don't you have the slightest bit of benevolence? Seeing your senior brother who usually dotes on you suffer like this? Zhang Qingxiao immediately cried out in pain. Second senior brother, don't complain. I won't give you anything. Xiao Hua righteously said. If you don't want to give then don't give. How about, you try the cold yourself? Zhang Qingxiao said angrily. Fine, aren't I right here? Xiao Hua said with a smile. At worst I won't go back tonight. I'll just stay outside the cave with you. A gentleman keeps his word. Junior brother, let's see if you'll stay here tonight. Zhang Qingxiao felt a bit better after dragging Xiao Hua along. While the three were talking, Gong Mingwei had already looked around the tranquil cave. He walked to the entrance and said, This tranquil cave has many depressions deep into the stone wall. People can sit in them. Junior brother, junior sister, choose one. We'll cultivate here for the next 100 days. Yes, senior brother. The two nodded and then rolled their eyes at Xiao Hua before walking away. Xiao Hua, eldest senior brother, what are your orders? Gong Mingwei took out a small silk pouch from his bosom and handed it over, saying, There are more than 10 exquisite grass seeds in here. Ah? Exquisite grass? Xiao Huagang had heard about the building foundation pill before. Of course he was very sensitive and cried out in surprise. Oh, that's right. Eldest senior brother, how could I have forgotten about the seed of the exquisite grass? When Zhang Qingxiao heard this from afar, she immediately slapped her forehead and shouted, No wonder when Master mentioned the exquisite grass earlier, I felt that it sounded familiar. Junior brother, go quickly. Take this bag of seeds and plead with father. Xiao Xinrui was also pleasantly surprised. Oh, Xiaohua took the bag with a smile and asked, how should I report this to the sect head? AI, we also inadvertently obtained it. A mysterious destitute cultivator took this bag and exchanged it with quite a few people, but they all refused to exchange it with him. Junior apprentice sister pitied him, so she exchanged it with 3 parasol pills. Gong Mingwei spoke the truth. When Xiaohua heard this, he frowned but still said, Senior brother, wait a moment. After a while, Xiaohua returned. How is it? Zhang Qingxiao couldn't wait to ask. The sect head said that this thing is trash. The exquisite grass isn't grown with seeds. It's not even worth a single parasol pill. Xiaohua couldn't help but laugh. Ah, Xiao Xinrui cried, we were still cheated. That person said that this was a good thing, but no one recognized it. Looking at the silk pouch that Xiaohua handed over, Gong Mingwei said expressionlessly, take it. Then he turned around and found a place to sit cross-legged. He used Shang Huaming's secret heart technique and began to cultivate in peace. Seeing their eldest senior brother like this, Zhang Qingxiao and Xiao Xinrui also calmed down. They each found a place to sit and regulated their breathing. Xiaohua looked at the silk pouch in his hand, and the corner of his mouth revealed a bitter smile. Gong Mingwei and the other two. This was not the first time they had been fooled. Not only was he already used to it, even Xiao Yuehong, upon hearing about the seed of the exquisite grass, did not even open the silk pouch and directly dismissed Xiaohua with a single sentence. But, if he didn't use the seed to grow the exquisite grass, then, wouldn't it take 300 years? Who would do that? In any case, Xiaohua knew that he definitely wouldn't do it. Seeing that Gong Mingwei and the other two were cultivating, Xiaohua didn't want to disturb them. He tossed the silk pouch in his hand, caught it and tossed it out again. Then, he turned around and walked out of the tranquil cave. Outside the tranquil cave, the cold wind blew. Xiaohua shrunk his neck and secretly regretted it. Why is the wind on Lone Staff Peak so strong? It's not as good as Shihua Peak's weather. Why did I casually promise senior sister to accompany them here? I didn't say anything wrong. Looking around, Xiaohua slowly walked towards the peak. The tranquil cave wasn't far from the peak. In the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Xiaohua arrived at the peak of Lone Staff Peak. The wind on the peak was even stronger. However, standing at such a high place gave him a relaxed and happy feeling. The Lone Staff Peak was completely bare. Xiaohua casually found a huge mountain rock and sat down. Beside the mountain rock, there were a few stalks of wild grass stubbornly standing upright, swaying left and right in the wind. Xiaohua stretched out his hand and grabbed a stalk of wild grass, holding it in his mouth. While biting the grass with his teeth, he looked around. This was also his first time coming to the Lone Staff Peak, so the surrounding scenery was still very unfamiliar. Lone Staff Peak was the tallest peak in Yellowflower Ridge. There weren't many trees on the peak. Most of them were strange rocks. At the bottom of the peak was a wide mountain stream. The gurgling water flowed into a huge cold pond at the side. There's also a pond here? Look at this, flowing water. Isn't it connected to the pond at Shihua Peak? Xiaohua saw the pond and was delighted. He threw the stalk of grass in his hand and was about to fly down. However, the grass flew with the wind and landed on his face. Just as Xiaohua was about to impatiently push it away, his mind suddenly lit up. Just now, when I took out the Wu Yao pill, why was there grass in my hand? Xiaohua recalled the scene when he took out the Wu Yao pill. I don't seem to have put any grass in my head. Thinking this, Xiaohua sat down again and closed his eyes. When he closed his eyes, in his mind appeared a space of several tens of zhang. This was Xiaohua's biggest secret. A secret that he had never told anyone. Where this space came from and how it was formed, Xiaohua didn't know at all. In any case, after he was saved by Xiao Yuehong, he discovered that there was an empty space in his mind. He could put things in this space and also take things out of it. It wasn't much different from the storage pouch that Xiao Xinrui used. Of course, what if there was a difference? He was the only one who could perceive this space. No one else knew about it. Also, this space had a ground and the ground also had soil. It was different from the soft space of the storage pouch. At this moment, Xiaohua closed his eyes and looked into the space in his mind. Other than some messy little things, there were a few sparse weeds growing on the ground. Beside the weeds, there were a few withered weeds and a few tools used for weeding. Oh, I understand. I'm afraid When I was weeding in the medicinal field this morning, when I put the tools into the space, I also put in some weeds. Xiaohua nodded slightly. Ever since he knew that he could put things in his mind, he casually threw some tools, jade bottles and other things that he needed to carry with him. In any case, the space of several tens of zhang was enough for him to store everything. Oh, that's not right. I accidentally put them in my quilt this morning. How could they have grown so tall? Just as Xiaohua wanted to shift his attention away from the weeds, he saw that the weeds were thriving and had a question. Could it be that they were brought in a few days ago? Immediately Xiaohua thought again. Since weeds can grow in this space, then what about spiritual herbs? Xiaohua naturally turned his thoughts to the silk bag in his hand. Xiaohua thought and raised his left hand to his ear. The silk bag in his hand disappeared. Immediately after, the silk bag appeared on the ground in his mind. Anyway, this is the seed of the exquisite grass. I'll plant it first. Sect master only said that it was useless. I failed and no one will know. That's not right. Spiritual herbs are different from weeds. They need to be specially planted. But I can't go in myself. How can I plant it? Xiaohua looked at the silk bag and was worried. He could take things out of the space, but he couldn't plant spiritual herbs in it. That's right. How could I forget? Doesn't Sect Master have a puppet that can plant spiritual herbs? Although he didn't use it for a long time, I can still use it to try. Since I'm going to plant it, why don't I plant some of the spiritual herbs in Cherishing Flower Peak's medicine garden here and see what effect it has? Xiaohua grabbed a flying talisman from the space beside his ear. He slapped it on his body and flew toward Mindless Worship Peak. Mindless Worship Peak was the main peak of Yellow Flower Ridge. It was also where Shang Huaming's sect was located. Puppets that could plant spiritual herbs were extremely rare in the Dawn Rain continent. Xiao Yuehong had spent a lot of effort to exchange for it from someone else by chance. Therefore, after Shang Huaming had Xiao Hua as a servant to plant spiritual herbs, Xiao Yuehong treasured the puppet very much. When he heard that Xiao Hua wanted to use a puppet, he didn't find it strange. He looked Xiao Hua up and down and said, "Is there anything in the medicine garden that you can't handle? Why did you think of a puppet?" Reporting to Sect Master. Long ago on the road, Xiao Hua had already come up with an excuse. Senior brother and senior sister are reflecting in the tranquil cave. When I accompanied them just now, I already told them that I'll accompany them every day. With more people, wouldn't it be more lively? Moreover, I can also take the opportunity to have senior brother give me pointers on my cultivation. Lively with more people? Xiao Yuehong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Chapter 1231. Master told them to calm down so that they could cultivate. How could there be any liveliness or loneliness? However, they are usually busy cultivating and never go to the medicinal garden, so it's not good for them to guide your cultivation. This is a very good opportunity. Apart from cultivating, they can also give you some pointers. Xiaohua, you should also work hard, okay? Hurry up and cultivate to the 3rd layer of qi refining. You're only half a disciple. When can you truly become my disciple? Aren't I working hard right now? Xiaohua laughed. Right, go. In these 100 days, let the puppet do more work. You should cultivate more. Xiao Yuehong patted his storage pouch and took out a yellow talisman and a fist-sized spirit stone. Take this yellow talisman to the secret room. You've used the puppet before, so you know how to control it. Take this spirit stone and place it on the puppet's back. It shouldn't be a problem for you to use it for 100 days. Sect Master. The puppet also uses spirit stones? Xiaohua reached out and took it. He asked curiously. Child, if you don't use the spirit stones, how can the puppet move? How can it grow spirit herbs? Xiao Yuehong laughed and scolded. Xiaohua smiled and didn't say anything. After bidding farewell to Xiao Yuehong, he came to the back mountain of Mingli Peak. He arrived in front of a smooth and shiny stone wall and stuck the yellow talisman on it. A faint cyan light flashed, and a cave about the height of a person appeared on the stone wall. Xiaohua walked in without hesitation. At the end of the cave was Shang Huaming's secret room. Inside was Shang Huaming's collection of the past generations. Xiaohua looked around and saw a puppet about the same height as a person in the corner of the secret room. The puppet was lying diagonally on the ground, its back leaning against the stone wall and its head slightly drooping. Xiaohua walked over and turned the puppet over. Sure enough, there was a fist-sized hole on the puppet's back. Xiaohua took out the spirit stone and placed it in the hole. A faint white light emitted from the spirit stone, and the puppet's body, made of an unknown material, flashed slightly. The hole on the puppet's back disappeared, and the puppet stood up from the ground like a person. The puppet's limbs were the same as a person's, but the carving on its head was relatively rough. The facial features on its face weren't too similar, especially its two eyes. Although they showed a bit of spirit after the spirit stone was placed, most of them were abnormally empty. Xiaohua looked at it carefully, then reached out and stroked the puppet's arm. With a thought, the puppet disappeared and was absorbed into his mind. This puppet really doesn't have any life. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to store it in this space. When Xiaohua discovered the mysterious space in his mind, he also tried to absorb some small living animals into it. The result was, without exception, failure. Not even an ant could be absorbed into it. Coming out of the secret room, Xiaohua took off the yellow talisman, and the passage immediately disappeared, returning to its original smooth stone wall. The yellow talisman also flashed, ignited, and automatically turned into ashes. Xiaohua didn't need to report to Xiao Yuehong. His figure flew up and directly flew towards the lone staff peak. In fact, according to Xiaohua's plan, he should go to the Cherishing Flower Peak now and transplant the various spirit grasses in the medicine garden into his space. But thinking about how the space needed to be tidied up by the puppet, he could only wait until the soil was tidied up before he could plant them. While flying towards the lone staff peak, Xiaohua controlled the puppet. The puppet was driven by Xiaohua, and with the spirit stone providing spiritual energy, it automatically cleared out a large area of about 10 zhang in radius in Xiaohua's space. It was divided into several pieces and slowly tidied up, preparing to plant different spirit grasses. Time flew by. Unknowingly, more than 10 days had passed. In the space of Xiaohua's mind, under the puppet's reclamation and cultivation, the 10 zhang radius of land had been leveled and planted with the various spirit grasses in the medicine garden of the Cherishing Flower Peak. The seed of the exquisite grass was planted alone in one place. Of course, the absorption fruit used to refine the Peiyuan pill had also been transplanted by Xiaohua. He actually treated this space as his own private medicine garden. However, on the surface, things seemed to be progressing smoothly without any flaws. But Xiaohua could vaguely feel that something was not right. But as for what exactly was wrong, he could not pinpoint it out. He only knew that there must be something that was wrong. During these 10 days, Xiaohua spent most of his time on the Cherishing Flower Peak. He didn't have much time on the Lone Staff Peak, because Gong Mingwei and the other two were in the Tranquil Heart Cave, cultivating with their eyes closed to resist the bone-piercing cold wind. They didn't have much time to give pointers to Xiaohua's cultivation. Even Zhang Qingxiao, who couldn't stay idle the most, lost interest after telling Xiaohua a few times. After all, the cultivation method of the first layer of the qi refining realm was very shallow. Xiaohua had long since become familiar with it, and Zhang Qingxiao had already given him pointers. However, Xiaohua's inability to advance seemed to have nothing to do with his familiarity with the cultivation method. On this day, after Xiaohua finished his work in the medicine garden, he checked the half-dead spirit grasses in the space of his mind, as well as the exquisite grass that didn't show any signs of germination. His figure flashed and flew to the top of the Lone Staff Peak. The situation in the Tranquil Heart Cave was the same as before. Xiaohua said a few words to Xiao Xianrui and the others, asked a few more questions, then turned around to go back. However, when his eyes fell on the cold pond at the foot of the mountain, he couldn't help but stare blankly. At this time, above the cold pond, water vapor was rising and smoke was curling up. Felt very strange. Xiaohua's figure landed on the edge of the cold pond, and a warm feeling greeted him. Xiaohua was even more surprised. Could it be that this is different from the cold pond of Cherishing Flower Peak? In the mountain stream of Cherishing Flower Peak, there was also a pond about the same size as this cold pond. The water inside was bone-chilling cold. Xiaohua had once tried to put his hand into the water, and the coldness was like a knife that pierced his bones. Therefore, he very naturally thought that the water in this pond was also cold. However, when he placed his hand into the pond, the warmth of his hand made him pleasantly surprised. This pond water was indeed warm, completely different from the cold pond. Xiaohua straightened his body and without any hesitation he took off his clothes. With a plop sound he jumped into the pond water and began to swim very carefreely. In the entire Yellow Flower Peak, there were only 5 of them, Shang Huaming and the others. There was no 6th person. Now that 3 of them were locked up in the Tranquil Heart Cave who could still come and peek at him. After playing in the warm pond for a while, Xiaohua lay on his back on the surface of the water. Above his head was the sky between the mountain peaks. The few dark clouds in the sky were blown away from time to time, but the wind in the sky was still not small. Thinking about the coldness of Lone Staff Peak and the hot spring in this pond, Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh at the miraculous nature of creation. This pond is so warm, but it's very far from Cherishing Flower Peak. Little White is unlucky and can only endure the cold in this cold pond. Xiaohua couldn't help but think of Little White in the cold pond. Just as he was thinking, Xiaohua suddenly felt his hair stand on end, as if he was being closely watched by some monster. He straightened up, but before he could stand firmly in the water, a white line shot out from the pond like lightning. Ah! Xiaohua was shocked at first, but when that white line flew in front of his eyes, his face revealed a happy expression. He stretched out his arm and said with a smile, "Ha, Little White? Why did you also run over here?" A small white snake that was as thick as a chopstick and over 2 feet long flew in front of Xiaohua. It coiled its soft body around Xiaohua's outstretched arm and raised its oval-shaped snake head. Its slender, scarlet tongue rapidly extended and contracted. Its 2 eyes seemed to understand Xiaohua's words as it stared straight at Xiaohua. This Little White turned out to be a little white snake. Speaking of this little white snake, it was also extremely fated with Xiaohua. It was the first creature Xiaohua saw after he woke up, and it was even a bit earlier than Xiao Yuehong who saved him. That day Xiao Yuehong brought Xiaohua back to Yellow Flower Ridge. Because Xiaohua didn't have any injuries and Xiao Yuehong was also helpless, he could only put Xiaohua in a room. After Xiaohua woke up a few days later, he didn't see anyone, so he followed the mountain path down Missing Worship Peak. Coincidentally, 2 days before Xiaohua woke up, thunder rumbled in Yellow Flower Ridge and rain fell unceasingly. The gullies on Missing Worship Peak were filled with rainwater mixed with mud as they flowed down the mountain. Xiaohua was careless and fell into the mountain stream, following the flow of the water into Cherishing Flower Peak's cold pond. Just as Xiaohua was struggling to stand up from the cold pond, he saw the little white snake. At that time the little white snake was already on the verge of death, almost without any vitality. It was like a little white rope that was rippling along the pond. Xiaohua only thought that the little white snake was dead and didn't care. But, when the little white snake touched Xiaohua's arm along with the waves, he was caught off guard and bit Xiaohua's arm. Xiaohua was naturally shocked. He reached out his hand and immediately grabbed the little white snake's 7 inches, wanting to pinch it to death. But, just as Xiaohua's hand was about to exert force, Xiaohua unexpectedly discovered that he could understand the little white snake's eyes. It was a kind of pitiful, helpless, pleading expression. Following the corner of the little white snake's eyes, he could actually see teardrops falling. In an instant, Xiaohua's heart softened. He looked at the place where the little white snake had bitten him. There were no signs of being poisoned. He only felt that his blood was being sucked into the little white snake's body. And his own body didn't have any abnormal reaction. Therefore Xiaohua stretched out his arm and allowed the little white snake to bite him. Speaking of which, it was also strange. After the little white snake sucked Xiaohua's blood, in the time it took to drink a cup of tea, it seemed to be full of vigor and vitality. It let go of Xiaohua's mouth and nodded very gratefully at him. Then it drilled into the depths of the cold pond and disappeared. And there was only a small wound on Xiaohua's arm. There wasn't any sign of being poisoned. At this time Xiao Yuehong chased down from the mountain and pulled Xiaohua out of the cold pond. Then he brought him back to Minushi Peak. Later Xiaohua stayed at Yellow Flower Ridge and took care of the medicine garden at Cherishing Flower Peak. In his free time he would also go to the cold pond at the foot of the mountain. Every time he came, the little white snake would also appear on time. It was like an old friend, accompanying Xiaohua on the grass beside the cold pond. After a long time, one person and one snake became extremely familiar with each other. Xiaohua then called the little white snake Little White. Chapter 1232. Little White was very intelligent. It seemed to be able to understand Xiaohua's simple words. Even when Xiaohua was bored and said some random things, Little White would frequently nod its head, very much like a qualified friend patiently listening. Xiaohua also felt strange in his heart. He once intentionally asked Xiao Yuehong if he knew that there was a psychic little white snake in the cold pond. Unfortunately, Xiao Yuehong thought for a long time and only shook his head. After a long time he found some clues from Shang Huaming's ancient records. However, Xiao Yuehong told Xiaohua that there might be a psychic python in Yellowflower Ridge. It had lived longer than Shang Huaming. However, it was a huge python, a python that also cultivated. It wasn't the tiny little white snake that Xiaohua spoke of. Of course, this was only a possibility. Shang Huaming hadn't seen that huge python for many generations. Xiaohua heard this and didn't take it to heart. After all, there were only 5 people in Yellowflower Ridge. Apart from Xiaohua, the other 4 were all cultivators. Xiaohua also cherished Little White, this playmate that wasn't a playmate. However, Xiaohua had always seen Little White in the cold pond of Xihua Peak. He also didn't know that the pond of Lone Staff Peak was actually connected to the cold pond of Xihua Peak. Therefore, he didn't expect Little White to appear here. The little white snake coiled around Xiaohua's arm and looked at Xiaohua. Its small snake head slightly swayed as if it was amusing Xiaohua. Xiaohua smiled and said, "The pond here is abnormally warm. You probably already knew. Why didn't you tell me? The pond of Xihua Peak is extremely cold. There's no way to play. Next time when you come you have to call me." The little white snake obviously couldn't speak. Its tongue flickered and Xiaohua also treated it as if it understood. "Let's go, I'll jump down from there." Xiaohua raised his head and looked at the call above the pond. Soon after, Xiaohua slowly climbed to the call with the little white snake coiled around his arm. Without waiting for Xiaohua to stand firmly on the mountain rock, Little White's body suddenly tensed up as if it felt something. It straightened its head and looked around vigilantly. However, when Xiaohua straightened up and wanted to jump down from the mountain rock, nothing unusual happened. What Xiaohua and Little White Snake didn't know was that, far away from them, a speck of light was flying towards them at a speed that was imperceptible to the naked eye. The light particles were extremely small and weak. Under the sunlight they couldn't be seen. Moreover, the trajectory of the light particles was very strange. First they flashed in the air for a moment, then disappeared into the void. When they reappeared again they were already very far away from where they were before. Just as the light particles appeared in the distance, a bracelet-like thing suddenly appeared in the mysterious space in Xiaohua's mind. The bracelet-like thing emitted a powerful fluctuation from Xiaohua's mind and spread in all directions. The fluctuation was extremely fast, and it only took an instant for it to reach where the light particle was. The light particle was swept by the fluctuation and immediately trembled. It actually changed its direction and gradually shot towards Xiaohua. "Ha, watch me." How could Xiaohua know about the changes in his mind? He only laughed and jumped out from the mountain valley. He flipped a few times in the air and was about to fall into the pool. At this moment, the light particles were attracted by the fluctuation of the bracelet-like thing and, coincidentally, came out from the void behind Xiaohua's head. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, it entered the back of his head and disappeared without a trace. The little white snake on Xiaohua's arm didn't even have time to turn around. Everything had already happened. Immediately after, Xiaohua's body fell into the pool with a plop. The light particles shot into the back of Xiaohua's head and appeared in the center of the bracelet-like thing. They steadily stopped there and didn't move. The bracelet-like thing absorbed the light particles and immediately started to spin rapidly, emitting a brilliant brilliance. Xiaohua, who was flying under the control of the bracelet-like thing, only felt that his eyes were filled with light. It was as if his entire body was immersed in the light. In his world there was only light, a dazzling light. Apart from light there was nothing else. Apart from being dazzling, this light also pierced his entire mind. Before he could think of anything else, Xiaohua fell into a coma. The little white snake followed Xiaohua into the pool and immediately fell from Xiaohua's arm and swam in the pool. The moment the little white snake landed on the surface of the pool, a strange thing happened. The little white snake instantly became incomparably huge. Its entire body was even bigger than a common water tank. At the same time, the little white snake also became extremely long. Its entire body coiled up and almost filled the entire pool. At this moment, the little white snake raised its head high. It didn't know what had happened to Xiaohua's body. It looked around vigilantly. Swish, 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 the little white snake flicked its tongue a few times and its body expanded once again. Huge golden scales gradually grew on its snow-white skin. Below its abdomen, there were 4 places where the phantom of claws gradually appeared. The strangest thing was that the little white snake's head also gradually changed. Horns grew on its head, its eyes became bigger and its mouth became wider. Looked exactly like a dragon's head. Kacha kacha. A burst of heavenly thunder suddenly flashed in the air above the lone staff peak. The air beside the tranquil heart cave also gradually turned crimson. Hearing the sound of thunder, the little white snake's eyes were filled with fear. It slightly shook its gradually transforming dragon head and twisted its body. With a flash of brilliance, all the illusions disappeared. The little white snake returned to its previous appearance. The heavenly thunder in the air also disappeared. The crimson color in the air also seemed to have been blown away by the wind. At first, the entire space was filled with light. Soon after, Xiaohua's eyes were pitch black. That darkness was very absolute and very still. There wasn't the slightest bit of light and there wasn't the slightest bit of movement. He didn't know how much time had passed. In an instant, perhaps 10,000 years, perhaps even longer, in this darkness at a point extremely far away or extremely near, there was a sudden change. First, it constantly vibrated, emitting a kind of mysterious fluctuation that instantly spread throughout the entire space. Then that point turned from endless darkness to transparent. Then it turned crimson, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, all the way to purple. Every color evolved into a kind of fluctuation that spread throughout the entire space. Finally, the purple color lasted for the longest time, and the fluctuation was also the most intense. After the purple color passed, the entire space stopped vibrating. It was only a moment of silence. All the colors just now appeared at that point, and the entire space was filled with the 7 kinds of fluctuations. At this moment, that point suddenly lit up. Unexpectedly, a ray of white light flashed from there. In an instant, the white light filled the entire space. At the same time, the chaotic fluctuations in the space also changed into an even more mysterious vibration. The vibration filled the entire space as if the space was filled with white light. Xiaohua's thoughts suddenly flashed through the white light. The entire space immediately disappeared and the white light also disappeared. He suddenly opened his eyes. First, a blank white light appeared in Xiaohua's eyes. Then only then did his eyes reveal his pitch-black pupils. Looking at the long and narrow sky in the sky, as well as the clouds in the sky that were torn apart by the fierce wind, Xiaohua gradually came back to his senses. At this moment, he was floating on top of the pool. What happened? Xiaohua was greatly shocked. He rubbed his head and straightened up from the pool. The little white snake was still swimming in the pool beside him. Seeing Xiaohua wake up, it also intimately swam over, as if nothing had happened just now. What's going on? I jumped down from the mountain rock and everything before my eyes was bright. I don't know anything. How long have I been unconscious? Just what happened? Xiaohua stepped on the water and looked around in astonishment. The pool was still steaming and the little white snake was still coiling around his arm. Nothing had changed, as if nothing had happened. However, the scene produced by the light just now was deeply engraved in his mind. If nothing had happened, then where did this memory come from? Just as Xiaohua was looking around trying to find some clues, a red brilliance suddenly flew down from the sky. That brilliance directly arrived in front of Xiaohua and steadily stopped in front of him. Xiaohua frowned. He reached out his hand and pinched it. A trace of magic power was transmitted over, and that crimson light broke with a poof. Xiao Yuehong's voice transmitted over. Xiaohua, quickly come to the guest hall. Guest hall? Seeing the sound transmission talisman slowly disappear, Xiaohua secretly said, it seems, this guest hall hasn't been opened yet? What kind of important guest came today? After receiving the sect master's order, Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. Not to mention the picturesque trees planted in disorder, nor the corresponding brook, pavilion and mountain scenery. Just by looking at the large open space paved with square blue stone and a few jade tables and stone stools on the ground, Xiaohua knew that this was probably the place where Shan Huiming temporarily received guests. Sure enough, Xiao Yuehong walked down the flying boat and patted his waist. A palm-sized jade pendant appeared in his hand. He sent his magic power into the jade pendant, and the jade pendant immediately glowed with a dazzling brilliance. Seeing the brilliance of the jade pendant, Xiaohua very naturally thought of the inexplicable white light that filled his eyes just now. Seeing the brilliance, Xiao Yuehong pointed his finger. The brilliance rose from the sky, circled in the air and rushed into the fog outside the mountain. In an instant, a spacious passage appeared in the fog. Immediately a clear voice sounded, "Sect Master Xiao, long time no see." Following that voice, a flying boat came out of the fog passage. It flew not far in front of Xiao Yuehong and landed. 2 men and a woman walked out of the flying boat. Xiao Yuehong's face was full of smiles. He took a few steps forward and cupped his hands. "Sect Master Jiang, it's been a long time since we last met. How are you?" Hearing this, Xiaohua somewhat understood and thought to himself, could it be? This is the 100 Herbs sect that senior apprentice sister mentioned a few days ago? What are they doing here? With this thought he couldn't help but secretly size them up. Sect Master Jiang looked to be in his 40s. His skin was very good and his hair was pitch black. Behind him was a young man dressed in a turquoise robe, holding a folding fan in his hand. His features were handsome and he looked rather elegant. He should be the young sect master of 100 Herbs Gate, Jiang Fan. Next to Jiang Fan was a tall and slender woman. She was dressed in a light red robe. Her face was fair and she had round eyes and a fine nose. Her hair was like the clouds, and there was an air of arrogance about her that was very threatening. Seeing Xiaohua size her up, the woman's eyes slightly slanted. Seeing Xiaohua's clothes, she already understood. She swept a glance at Xiaohua, then looked at Xiao Yuehong. While Xiaohua was sizing up the people from 100 Herbs sect, Sect Master Jiang Jiantong also cupped his hands in return. "Thanks to Sect Master Zhao's good fortune, I've already extinguished the desire to win these past few years. I've only stayed in the sect to train the disciples and concentrate on the sect's affairs. I've rarely seen you old friends. A few days ago when I heard my son talk about E-City, I couldn't help but feel nostalgic. That's why I brought my son and daughter to see you old friends." As he spoke he turned around and waved his hand saying to Jiang Fan, "Fan come and greet Sect Master Xiao." Hearing this, Jiang Fan and Jiang En stepped forward and bowed in greeting. Xiao Yuehong was bewildered, but he put on a smile on his face and said with a wave of his sleeve, forget it. I haven't seen you for a long time. Sect Master Jiang's son and daughter are already so big. Isn't that so? This old man has seen Sect Master Zhao's beloved daughter when she was young. She's already slim and elegant now." Jiang Jiantong said with a smile, "Fan give our gift to Sect Master Xiao." "Yes, father." Jiang Fan nodded and patted the storage pouch at his waist. He took out a few jade bottles and handed them over with a smile. "Sect Master Xiao, this is my sect's secret Peiyuan pill, the Snow Jade Pill. Please accept it as a token of my respect. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for it." He could not help but sigh and went straight to the herb garden to pick some fruits. On the Dawn Rain continent, as long as one had some cultivation, they would not eat the food of the mortal world. Therefore Hua Ming, like the other sects, had planted some spirit fruits in the herb garden. When they were free they would satisfy their cravings and entertain guests. Xiaohua picked some fruits that were unique to Yellow Flower Ridge. Just as he was about to fly up, he saw the spirit herbs in the herb garden and thought, I wonder how the spirit herbs in the space are doing? If it's not working, I'll take out the puppets first and leave them in the herb garden. As he thought, he looked into the space. This look was not important, but the strange scene in the space caused him to be stunned on the spot. What he saw was a square cube floating above the space, slowly rotating. Every time it rotated, a brilliant light would shoot out from the cube, illuminating the entire space. It was like the sun in the outside world. What's going on? Xiaohua was so shocked that he asked himself more than 10 questions in a row. Previously, although the space was pitch black, it was in Xiaohua's mind. He could sense everything in the space and it had nothing to do with whether there was light or not. He also very naturally ignored the problem of light. After all, there was no light in the storage bag. But, now that there was light, he could see everything in the space. The spirit herbs that were standing upright, the exquisite grass that had not yet sprouted, the messy piles outside the herb garden, and the puppet standing outside the herb garden. Xiaohua had a very familiar feeling. Why is it no different from the herb garden in front of me? Xiaohua did not seem to understand the difference between the two. Oh right, did something happen when I fainted at the foot of the Lone Staff Peak just now? Was it because this inexplicable cube appeared in my space that I fainted? It had to be said that Xiaohua's guess was very close to reality, but who could he verify it with? It was already shocking that there was a storage space in the mind, and this space also had light. Even the little white snake could not casually say this, right? After being stunned for a moment, Xiaohua did not have time to take out the puppet. He hurriedly flew up and rushed to the reception hall. The reception hall was a huge hall on the west side of the Mingli Peak. When Xiaohua arrived, Gong Mingwei and the other two had already arrived. Shang Huaming and the 100 Herbs Gate were sitting on the host and guest seats, and seemed to be chatting happily. However, the expressions of the young disciples of the two sects were somewhat different. Jiang Fan, the young master of the 100 Herbs Gate, had a slightly flushed and excited face. From time to time he stole glances at Xiao Xianrui, and then very carefully glanced sideways at the two elders who were talking. Jiang Yan of the 100 Herbs Gate had a curious look on her face. Her big eyes rolled around as she stared at Xiao Xianrui, carefully observing her. When she inadvertently glanced at Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao, a slight disdain appeared on her face. Under the bright eyes of the two people of the 100 Herbs Gate, Xiao Xianrui was both shy and slightly angry. She could only lower her head with a bashful face. Needless to say, Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao's faces were extremely ugly. They glared at Jiang Fan from time to time, but Jiang Fan's eyes were full of Xiao Xianrui, so how could he notice? Seeing Xiaohua bring up the fruits, Xiao Yuehong smiled and said, "Sect leader Jiang, come. My yellow flower ridge cannot be compared to your medicine farmer peak, but we also have rare fruits. This is my yellow flower ridge's specialty, please come and have a taste." With a wave of his hand, 3 fruits floated in the air and flew in front of the 3 people of the 100 Herbs Gate. Jiang Jiantong and Jiang Yan smiled and took the fruits, while Jiang Fan was startled. Then he embarrassedly took one and put it in his mouth. After tasting the fruits, Jiang Jiantong smiled and said, "My son and daughter have never been to Yellow Flower Ridge. Please take them out and enjoy the beautiful scenery. Sect leader Xiao, what do you think?" "Ah, of course, Mingwei, you 3 take young Master Jiang and Miss Jiang out and walk around." "Yes, disciple obeys." Gong Mingwei stood up and bowed. Still glaring at Jiang Fan, he raised his hand and said, "Please." Xiaohua was not Shang Huaming's official disciple, so of course he could not accompany them. He only stood behind Xiao Yuehong waiting on the side. Seeing that all the disciples had left, Jiang Jiantong cupped his hands and said, "Sect leader Xiao, this time I came to visit Shang Huaming. I actually have 2 very important matters." "Oh, please speak, Sect leader Jiang. This one is all ears." Xiao Yuehong naturally knew that he had important matters to discuss. The first matter is that the war between immortals and devils has just ended. Countless immortal seniors have fallen in the war. I'm afraid that the cultivation forces of the Dawn Rain continent will undergo a great change. My 100 Herbs Gate and Shang Huaming are both insignificant sects, so it's extremely easy for us to be implicated in this turbulent situation. This one is thinking that if the 2 sects can form an alliance and combine our strength, wouldn't it be better to resist the sudden change? Here, Jiang Jiantong glanced at Xiao Yuehong's expression and continued. This one knows that 100 Herbs Gate's cultivation method only allows one to cultivate to the late foundation establishment stage. It doesn't touch on how to condense a core or cultivate a golden core. This is my 100 Herbs Gate's shortcoming. However, my 100 Herbs Gate has many disciples and many of them are outstanding. We have 2 foundation establishment disciples and Fan-er has also reached the late Qi refinement stage. With the support of my 100 Herbs Gate's medicinal pills, rushing to the foundation establishment stage is not a delusion. Sect leader Jiang is right. Xiao Yuehong's expression didn't change as he nodded slightly. Every 1,000 years, the war between immortals and devils will cause great changes in the Dawn Rain continent. This time is no exception. If our 2 sects can work together, it'll be much better than fighting alone. Moreover, Sect leader Jiang has clearly stated the strengths and weaknesses of our 2 sections. I, Shang Huaming, do indeed have a shortcoming of lacking outstanding disciples. Ha, sect leader Shao. Does this mean that you agree? Jiang Jiantong exclaimed in surprise. Of course. How could this one not agree to something that benefits both sides? However, how our two sects will assist each other in the future still needs to be discussed in detail. Xiao Yuehong said with a smile. Good. Jiang Jiantong raised his hand and Xiao Yuehong did the same. The two of them clapped their hands together as if they were making an oath. Haha, since sect leader Xiao has agreed to the alliance between our two sects, then this one second matter is easy to discuss. Please speak, sect leader Jiang. If the first matter is official, then the second matter is a private matter. Jiang Jiantong said with a smile. Oh no, this guy, he's going to talk about senior sister. Xiao Hua, who was standing by the side, immediately thought. Sect leader Xiao, what do you think this is? Unexpectedly, sect leader Jiang didn't mention Xiao Xinrui. Instead, he clapped his hands, took out 2 jade bottles from his storage pouch and handed them over. What is this? Xiao Yuehong took them curiously, opened them and smelled them. It's easy to agree to this matter. Jiang Jiantong's face lit up. Just as he was about to get up, Xiao Yuehong hurriedly waved his hand and said, Please wait for me to finish speaking, sect leader Jiang. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for it. Chapter 1234. Hehe, I've been rude. Jiang Jiantong saw that Xiao Yuehong didn't directly refuse and knew that he had some confidence, so he couldn't help but smile. Sect Master Jiang also knows that I only have one daughter, little Rui. She has been spoiled since she was young and she lost her mother when she was young. I feel guilty towards her. This marriage is a matter of life and death. If I didn't ask for her opinion, I wouldn't dare to easily agree to Sect Master Jiang's request. Your daughter's mother's matter. I've heard a little about it. Sect Master Xiao dotes on your daughter so much that I'm not worthy of it. My daughter has been beaten quite a bit under my hands, hehe. Hearing this, Xiao Yuehong nodded slightly. Since Sect Master Jiang knows my thoughts, then please postpone the marriage proposal until I ask. Little Rui's thoughts. What do you think? Of course. I didn't think it would be so simple. Besides, I and the other elders are just thinking about our children. As for where they go, it's all their fate. This time I brought Canine Girl with me because I wanted her to get to know your daughter. I wanted her to learn from your daughter's dignified manner, so that the young disciples of our two sects can interact with each other and have more opportunities for each other. Hearing this, not only did Xiao Yuehong's heart move, but Xiao Hua also understood. This guy knows about the matter between eldest senior brother and second senior brother. He's using his daughter as bait again. Xiao Hua didn't know what Xiao Yuehong was thinking, but looking at Xiao Yuehong's smiling face, he was afraid that it wasn't quite the same as what Xiao Hua was thinking. Sure enough, Xiao Yuehong clapped his hands and said, Sect Master Jiang is right. My 3 disciples haven't left the mountain for a long time and only know how to cultivate in seclusion. They have less contact with the outside world. In the future, the young people of our two sects will have to interact more. It will definitely be beneficial for them. Ah, very true, very true. Jiang Jiantong smiled and waved his hand, putting the foundation establishment pills on the table into his storage bag. He said, Sect Master Xiao, if you have any good news, please send a flying sword message. I'll definitely rush over as soon as possible. Present this betrothal gift. Well said, well said. Xiao Yuehong smiled and said, Sovereign Jiang, please try the fruit again. Oh, it's getting late. I should return to Medicine Farmer Peak. Jiang Jiantong shook his head. Xiao Hua, go and call your senior brothers back. Don't tell them about this matter. Yes, disciple understands. Xiao Hua's mouth was filled with bitterness as he bowed. After Xiao Hua left, Jiang Jiantong smiled and said, This disciple of yours is also strange. If an ordinary person is unable to cultivate, then they wouldn't be able to enter the door at all. But he, on the other hand, can easily enter the door. Why can't he make any progress? I don't know either. However, he is very strong and is quite polite. His behavior is very proper and his character is good. Therefore, I decided to keep him and see if there is a chance in the future. If you're still in the first layer of aura refining in another 8 to 10 years, I'll make an exception and take you in. In any case, I, Shang Huaming, am from a small sect. I have nothing to worry about. That's right, that's right. Sovereign Xiao is benevolent. If it were my 100 Herbs Gate, I'm afraid we would have been expelled from Medicine Farmer Peak long ago. Jiang Jiantong echoed. Xiao Hua left the guest hall and searched for a long time before he found the 5 people in a place with beautiful scenery. At this time, the 5 people were divided into 3 groups, each standing in front of an unknown flower tree. The setting sun in the west was shining on the fiery red flowers, reflecting the bright red color on Xiao Xianrui's body. Her white and tender face was pink. She was really a peach blossom beauty. Jiang Yan was standing next to Xiao Xianrui. He seemed to be very familiar with Xiao Xianrui. She whispered something to her and from time to time pointed to the flower tree in the sky. The two of them laughed like silver bells. Jiang Fan was holding a folding fan in his hand. He looked like a deity as he accompanied the two of them with a smile. Although he didn't say anything, his expressive eyes often met Xiao Xianrui's eyes. Poor Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao, standing on the other side of Xiao Xianrui, they looked a little dull. Compared to Jiang Fan, they were much less elegant. Moreover, the two of them looked very gloomy, which was incompatible with the beautiful scenery around them. Xiao Yuehong was still thinking that his 2 disciples could have some kind of relationship with Jiang Yan. Jiang Yan simply didn't give them a second glance. Well, perhaps her first glance was also a look of disdain. Seeing Xiao Hua flying over, Gong Mingwei's eyes lit up. He waved his hand and said, "Xiao Hua, is master calling me back?" "Yes," reporting to eldest senior brother, "yes." Xiao Hua, of course, gave Gong Mingwei an extremely respectful answer. "Sister Yan, in this case let's go back first. My Shang Huaming has a lot of beautiful scenery and we can't see all of them in a short time. Anyway, now that you and I know each other, there will be many opportunities in the future. Let's look around carefully." "Yes, Sister Ray, my Yaonong Peak also has a lot of beautiful scenery. Although it can't be compared with Yellow Flower Ridge, it can be interesting. In the future when I invite you, you can't refuse." "Hee, Sister Yan's invitation, how can I refuse?" Xiao Xinrui laughed. Hearing this, Jiang Yan was very satisfied and gave Jiang Fan a complacent look. Who knew that Jiang Fan only looked at Xiao Xinrui with a smile and didn't pay attention to her at all. "Let's go." Xiao Xinrui smiled, holding Jiang Yan's hand, jumped up, and went straight back to the reception hall. Gong Mingwei was very unwilling to accompany Jiang Fan behind, but his figure fell behind by a lot. Zhang Qingxiao grabbed Xiao Hua, looked at the 4 people's figures gradually disappearing and whispered, "Little junior brother, how was it? What did master say to old Jiang in the reception hall?" Xiao Hua calmly looked at Zhang Qingxiao, shook his head slightly and said, "The sect master ordered, I didn't dare to say anything." "You..." Zhang Qingxiao knew that Xiao Hua would do what he said, so she could only stomp her feet and point at Xiao Hua's nose, saying, "You wronged me and eldest senior brother for doting on you." Xiao Hua felt wronged. "You can ask the sect master about this matter. Why do you have to make things difficult for me?" "Of course master will tell you, I just want to see if you are of the same mind as us," Zhang Qingxiao said and also flew back to the reception hall. Who knew? The matter was not what Zhang Qingxiao thought, and it was also out of Xiao Hua's expectations. When the 3 people of 100 Herb Hall left, Xiao Yuehong just waved his sleeve and said, "The guests have left, you all go to the Tranquil Heart Cave to reflect." He didn't even say a word. Whether it was Gong Mingwei, Zhang Qingxiao or Xiao Xinrui, they were all surprised, but what could they say? 2 drooped their heads, 1 rolled his eyes, and all returned to the lone staff peak. What about Xiao Hua? The 3 official disciples didn't ask. He knew the inside story, let alone say anything. This was because he had made a new discovery. While Xiao Hua was on his way back to Shihua Peak from the guest hall, he unconsciously looked towards the space. The various spirit grasses that were already half dead a few days ago were now all proud and arrogant. It was as if they had just been watered with spirit energy. "I understand." In an instant, Xiao Hua, who was in mid-air, slapped his forehead. The spiritual herbs planted by Shang Huaming, of course, could be planted with puppets. But after planting, the matter of watering them with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was not something puppets could do. And Xiao Hua, after cultivating Shang Huaming's cultivation method and entering the first level of qi refining, was able to use the corresponding incantation to pour the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into the medicinal field. He began to use puppets to plant spiritual herbs in the space, but there was no way to use the incantation to send the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into the space behind his head to water the spiritual herbs. Of course, those spiritual herbs would be half dead. Don't tell me, the light of this cube is actually the spiritual energy of heaven and earth? Xiaohua inconceivably stared at the cube that was still slowly rotating above the space. He didn't know what kind of material the cube was made of. Xiaohua could perceive everything in the space, but he couldn't perceive this cube. It was as if this cube didn't exist there. But that rotation and that light reminded Xiaohua that this thing really did exist. Moreover, it also turned Xiaohua's delusion of planting spiritual herbs in the space of his mind into reality. Returning to Shihua Peak, Xiaohua looked at the spiritual herbs in the medicinal field in high spirits, and then looked at the spiritual herbs in the space. He suddenly thought of something. The spiritual herbs in the medicinal field were watered with spiritual energy every day, and in the space, that strange cube was emitting light all the time. Didn't that mean that it was watering spiritual energy all the time? In an instant, Xiaohua's spirit was greatly uplifted, but then he was suspicious again. This cube is shining all the time, then there will be a time when there is no light. At that time, won't I be unable to plant spiritual herbs? Can I not let it shine? Can I let it shine when I want it to? Unfortunately, this idea was nothing more than a fantasy. Xiaohua couldn't perceive this cube at all, so how could he control it? Perhaps I can slowly search for it in the future? As long as it's in my space, there will always be a way. Xiaohua said to himself with a smile. Then Xiaohua tidied up the medicinal field, sat cross-legged in his small room, and began to cultivate with Shang Huaming's secret cultivation method in his meridians. Just as Xiaohua closed his eyes to cultivate, an inconceivable thing happened. Just as Xiaohua closed his eyes to cultivate in his mind, the slowly rotating cube suddenly stopped, and a magnificent brilliance flashed. The entire cube slowly trembled, expanding and contracting like a beating heart. Along with the trembling of the cube, an extremely mysterious fluctuation gradually expanded outwards, enveloping the entire space and then enveloping Xiaohua's mind. Little by little, it enveloped Xiaohua's entire body, as if his entire body had become that cube, faintly trembling along with the fluctuation. Then beyond Yellow Flower Ridge above the boundless horizon, a strange starlight suddenly appeared, covering Xiaohua's entire body. That starlight was different from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It couldn't be seen with the naked eye, and it couldn't be detected by divine sense. On the surface, Xiaohua looked the same as usual, only sitting cross-legged with his palms facing the sky, but his entire body had been tightly wrapped by the starlight, turning into a cocoon. Chapter 1235. Inside the cocoon of light, Xiaohua's body was shrouded in strange starlight. That starlight seeped into his skin, into his meridians, bones and flesh. Gradually, it changed everything in his body. This was still not the most important thing. In the space of Xiaohua's mind, even more and denser strange starlight was projected into the space along with the fluctuations of the glowing cube. Not only did it tightly wrap around the cube, but the entire space was also filled with starlight. Although the cube was still emitting rays of light at the same time, it was like a black hole, absorbing all the strange starlight in its surroundings without leaving a trace behind. However, that strange starlight seemed to have transcended space, transcended time. It was boundless and unceasing as it was projected over. The cube was simply unable to absorb all of it. Just at this moment, Xiaohua suddenly opened his eyes. He looked all around in a daze and said to himself, "It seems, it's a bit too quiet. It's different from usual." Just as Xiaohua opened his eyes, the cube rotated again. All the projected starlight also stopped abruptly as if nothing had happened at all. When Xiaohua excitedly looked at the thriving spiritual plants in the space and closed his eyes to cultivate again, the cube stopped again. The fluctuations appeared again and the strange starlight was projected over again. The next morning, without waiting for Xiaohua to open his eyes, he was already impatiently checking the space in his mind. He had already made sufficient preparations, but he was still shocked by the growth of the spiritual plants in the space. He foolishly couldn't say a word. After a long while, Xiaohua slapped his thigh with all his strength. Then the corners of his mouth opened. It was unknown whether it was from pain or joy. Immediately after, Xiaohua flipped over and stood up. He laughed for a long time and his entire body soared into the air. He somersaulted 3 or 4 times in the air before landing on the ground. Ha ha ha, I'm rich, I'm rich. Xiaohua laughed somewhat foolishly. In just one night, these spiritual plants actually grew as if they had grown for a year. In total, I've only grown spiritual plants for 3 years on this Xihua peak. If I calculate like this, the day after tomorrow the spiritual plants in my space will grow even more than the spiritual plants in my medicine field. When Xiaohua thought of this, he suddenly seemed to have realized something. His entire body became motionless and he stood there in a daze. After the time it took to drink half a cup of tea, he muttered, "My God, it seems it's not that simple. Didn't the sect leader say it a few days ago? What Ling Long grass, doesn't it need 300 years to be used? What 100 herbs gate, they actually dare to have ideas about senior sister. Wait until I grow the Ling Long grass and give it to the sect leader. Our Shang Huaming will also be able to refine foundation building pills. I'll refine dozens of pills. My 2 senior brothers and senior sister will each have 10 pills and eat them like fruits every day. The sect leader definitely won't have to worry about them building their foundation, and he definitely won't marry senior sister off. And I just don't know. Will it be better for eldest senior brother and senior sister to be together? Or will it be better for second senior brother and senior sister to be together? Ahem, am I thinking too much? Who senior sister will be together with even? The sect leader probably doesn't know. Why should I think about this? Xiaohua laughed mischievously as if he could see Shang Huaming's beautiful future. It's still early for the Ling Long grass to mature. Let's wait until this time next year. Then we'll talk about it. Right now, the most important thing is that absorption fruit. I've been in Shang Huaming for 3 years and I've only eaten 1 peiyuan pill. The sect leader hesitated for a long time, and only took it out because he wanted me to break through to the second layer of qi refining. Presumably, senior brother and senior sister also didn't take too much. If we wait until they come out of the tranquil heart cave and see so many peiyuan pill, wouldn't they go crazy with joy? Xiaohua thought happily, but then he frowned. That's right, why haven't the seeds of the Ling Long grass sprouted yet? They can be considered to have grown for a year, right? Could it be that it's really like what the sect leader said, that the Ling Long grass can't be grown from seeds? Forget it, since there's nothing to do, I'd better go and ask. The Ling Long grass that grows in the space for a day is equivalent to a year in the outside world. It can't be delayed. As Xiaohua thought, he directly flew to Minci Peak. Xiao Yuehong, who was gathering vitality and absorbing qi at the peak of Minci Peak, heard Xiaohua's question and said with a smile, "You silly child, a few days ago, I was just angry and casually scolded your eldest senior brother. You've also stayed in the medicinal garden for 3 years. What kind of spiritual herbs aren't grown from seeds? And even if some spiritual herbs were transplanted from other places, in the end they're still grown from seeds. Then the seeds of the Ling Long grass that eldest senior brother bought, don't they also have a purpose? Why did you deny it?" Xiaohua asked curiously. "Your eldest senior brother only wanted to use the seeds of the Ling Long grass to make up for their mistakes. Master let them go to the tranquil heart cave to reflect on their mistakes and let them focus on their cultivation. How could I let them come out so easily? Of course I had to say that. Moreover, Master's words aren't without reason. Why? The reason is very simple. Because the seeds of the Ling Long grass, from the moment they are planted, they need to be watered with heaven and earth spiritual energy once a day. They need to be watered for 100 years before they can grow. During these 100 years, they must not be watered with heaven and earth spiritual energy. Otherwise, they definitely won't be able to germinate. Ah? So difficult. Xiaohua was flabbergasted. Isn't that so? Isn't the foundation establishment pill very precious in our cultivation world? Xiao Yuehong smiled and said, "However, after the Ling Long grass germinates and grows out, it'll be easy to handle. You don't need to water it with heaven and earth spiritual energy every day. You just need to take care of it like a normal spiritual herb. After another 200 years of care, it can be refined into a foundation establishment pill." "Osek Master, I understand. So you're saying that after it germinates, the Ling Long grass can also be transplanted. If others want to plant it, they can directly use the seedlings of the Ling Long grass. There's no need to painstakingly take care of the seeds of the ling long grass for 100 years. Xiao Yuehong clapped his hands and smiled. That's right. So in the Dawn Rain continent, other than those like the 100 Herbs sect who specialize in cultivating spiritual herbs, everyone else transplants the ling long grass. So, Master said, the ling long grass isn't grown from seeds. It's also very reasonable. Disciple understands. Xiao Hua bowed and said, why are you suddenly asking about this? Xiao Yuehong smiled thoughtfully and said, could it be that your second senior brother still hasn't given up on his evil intentions? Does he still want to grow out sooner? Oh no. Xiao Hua repeatedly waved his hand and anxiously spat out. Disciple saw that senior brother and sister were punished. Disciple thought that the seeds of the ling long grass were also due to their contribution. Disciple wanted to ask about it carefully and discuss it with sect master. Yi Xiaohua, I also know what you're thinking. I'm very gratified that you have such a good relationship with your senior brother and sister. However, you should know, cultivation is hard work. I Shang Huaming only have you 4 disciples, so I don't supervise much. If I can take this opportunity to teach them a little lesson and let their cultivation progress, my painstaking efforts won't be in vain. Disciple understands. I reckon senior brother and sister also understand. Sect Master Emoshinyo. Xiao Hua smiled and said, AI, it's impossible not to worry. Didn't you see? Xiao Yuehong thought for a moment and then hesitated. He waved his hand and said, you also do your best to cultivate. The sooner you step into the 3rd layer of qi refining, the sooner Master can accept you as Shang Huaming's disciple. Xiao Hua's face revealed a bitter smile, but then he thought of something and became confident again. He smiled and said, I know, Sect Master, I will definitely work hard. Xiao Yuehong didn't know why Xiao Hua suddenly had confidence, but he was also very gratified. He patted his shoulder and said, then, why don't you hurry up and cultivate? Yes, Sect Master. Xiao Hua bowed and turned to leave. He then asked, that's right, Sect Master, let me ask you, in our Yellow Flower Ridge, did you find the 300-year-old ling long grass? Xiao Yuehong was surprised and asked curiously, why are you asking this? Strange. Xiao Hua, what's wrong with you today? Why do you keep talking about ling long grass? When Xiao Hua heard this, his expression unconsciously stiffened and he secretly complained in his heart, the more you talk, the more mistakes you will make. If I had known earlier, I would have asked tomorrow. However, before Xiao Hua could think of a countermeasure, Xiao Yuehong explained for him. Okay, you don't have to worry about yesterday's matter. Your head is full of foundation-building pills and ling long grass for no reason. In fact, what your senior martial brother and senior martial sister lack the most right now is the Peiyuan pill. They have to raise their cultivation to the peak stage of the aura refining realm first, then they can consider the matter of building their foundation. Okay, for the next few days, you should guard Cherishing Flower Peak properly. If you have nothing to do, you can also go to other places to take a look. I'll go to the depths of Yellow Flower Ridge to search. Maybe I'll really be able to find some old absorbing fruits. It seemed that Xiao Yuehong also had a similar plan. Seeing that Xiao Yuehong also wanted to go to the depths of Yellow Flower Ridge to search for ling long grass, Xiao Hua was delighted. He cupped his hands and said, Disciple congratulates Sect Master for achieving victory and immediate success. Pfft, Xiao Yuehong laughed out loud. I'm not going to look for people to fight. Where did this achieving victory come from? However, he immediately frowned and muttered, Your words have reminded Master. I don't know if the place where I found ling long grass still has it. If that thing is still there, Master will really have to think of another way. Xiao Hua didn't know what Xiao Yuehong was talking about, but he also didn't care. He only carefully probed, say, if Disciple looks around our Minchi Peak, will I be able to find good spiritual herbs? Bao Minchi Peak. Xiao Yuehong shook his head, I'm afraid not. Our Shang Huaming's disciples have already searched the surroundings of Minchi Peak who knows how many times. How could there be any old spiritual herbs? And Disciple understands. Disciple just wants to look around again. Xiao Hua smiled apologetically. If you have nothing to do, then go look around. Maybe you'll have good luck? Chapter 1236. Yellow Flower Ridge covered a large area. Shang Huaming could only occupy a few mountain peaks to the left of Minushi Peak, and their sect-protecting formation could only cover these areas. The deep area Xiao Yuehong was talking about was northeast of Yellow Flower Ridge. It was an extremely deep mountain forest, shrouded in fog all day long. The mountains were very high, the water was very deep, and the forest was very dense. Not to mention ordinary people, even cultivators rarely saw it. Others might not know, but Xiao Yuehong knew that it was a taboo area of Shang Huaming's ancestors. The ancient records in the sect clearly stated that if one did not have a cultivation of the Golden Core stage, one should not go deep. Based on Xiao Yuehong's lazy personality, he most likely would not go deep in this life. But the fact that 100 Herbs Gate had come to propose marriage was a huge blow to him. Although this was a win-win situation, and it seemed that his daughter was somewhat interested in Jiang Fan, it was probably the wisest choice for him to nod and agree. But when he saw Jiang Jiantong of the 100 Herbs Gate take out the 2 foundation establishment pills so easily, and was so confident that he had no room to refuse, he felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. What is the 100 Herbs Gate? It's just a small sect that specializes in planting herbs. The cultivation method in the sect can only be practiced to the late stage of foundation establishment. There are no records of how to control, fuse and condense the core. How can they compare to my Shang Huaming? Standing on the boat-shaped magic weapon, Xiao Yuehong flew into the depths of Yellow Flower Ridge. He was still angry and thought to himself, how can I not know what this Jiang Jiantong is planning? He just wants my Shang Huaming's Golden Core cultivation method. He wants to trick my little Rui with 2 foundation establishment pills. How can it be so easy? Alas, but it seems that little Rui has a good impression of Jiang Fan. What's wrong with big brother and second brother? Their hearts have been eaten by dogs. They can't even compare to that dog like Jiang Fan. I'd like to see what kind of betrothal gift your 100 Herbs Gate can take out if my 2 disciples are in the foundation establishment stage. The more Xiao Yuehong thought about it, the angrier he became. He snorted and the boat sped up. With a whoosh, it flew into the distance. Cultivators had a long lifespan, and as their cultivation deepened, their lifespan would increase. A normal qi refinement cultivator could live up to 100 years old. When they entered the foundation establishment stage, their lifespan could reach 200 years old. When they entered the Aurus Core stage, their lifespan could reach 300 years old. When they reached the nascent soul stage, their lifespan could reach a terrifying 500 years old. Although Xiao Yuehong's hair was white and he looked like he was in his 50s or 60s in the secular world, he was actually 90 years old. To be able to cultivate to the middle stage of foundation establishment in less than 100 years of age, Xiao Yuehong could be considered an extremely talented person. Cultivators had a long lifespan and their main goal was to pursue longevity in realms. Unless there was someone who was deeply in love or someone who cultivated both yin and yang, very few cultivators would spend extra energy on love. Even if it was for the sake of their descendants, they would still reproduce under the circumstances where the immortal Tao was indefinite. Xiao Yuehong also met Xiao Xinrui's mother when he was in his 60s, fell in love and had Xiao Xinrui. Therefore Xiao Xinrui was only 26 years old at this time. In Xiao Yuehong's eyes it was really too early to talk about love, so he was not very anxious. Moreover, he had always been following the idea of keeping the goodies within the family, and had his eyes on Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao. The sudden appearance of Jiang Fan really made him feel uncomfortable. Xiao Hua respectfully sent Xiao Yuehong out of Minushi Peak and went to Lone Staff Peak himself. However, he only looked at Gong Mingwei and the others and asked what was going on. He did not explain why Xiao Yuehong went out. But when they saw Xiao Hua, not only Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao had a trace of anger on their faces, but even Xiao Xinrui had a trace of coldness. They all wanted to know the purpose of Jiang Jiantong's visit, but they also knew that Xiao Hua was the most principled. If Xiao Yuehong told them not to say anything, then no matter what method they used or what temptation they offered, they could not get half a word from Xiao Hua's mouth. Therefore they could only return the look on their faces and did not ask. Xiao Hua did not care. Seeing that the 3 people ignored him, he stood at the entrance of the cave for a long time, cupped his hands and left with a smile. How could he not be happy in his heart? The space in his mind was really as he thought. All the spiritual herbs were growing healthily. A day in the space was equivalent to a year in the outside world. What he needed to do now was to wait for enough time and a suitable reason to take out the spiritual herbs of enough age from the space. Presumably with these vitality-assimilating fruits and exquisite grass, Xiao Yuehong would be able to refine enough Peiyuan pill and Foundation Establishment pill. His dream of Xiao Yuehong saving him and Shang Huaming's cultivation would not be in vain. Xiao Hua returned to the medicine garden on Shihua Peak and finished his daily tasks. Seeing that there was nothing to do, he stroked his left ear and a flight talisman appeared in his hand. This flight talisman was a yellow talisman. As the name implied, it was a talisman made of yellow paper. There were 3 types of talismans in the cultivation world of the Xiaoyu continent. The lowest level was the yellow talisman, which was made of yellow paper made of special materials and then drawn with special paint and a special writing brush. As long as the cultivator of this yellow talisman was at the qi refining stage, the talisman would be activated when magic power was injected into the yellow talisman. If it was a flight talisman, then it could be attached to the cultivator's body to display the flight technique. If it was a fireball talisman, then it could release a fireball on the ground or in the air. As for the power of the yellow talisman, not only did it depend on the cultivator of the talisman, it also depended on the amount of magic power of the user. If one looked at the power of the yellow talisman, then it could be divided into high, medium and low-grade yellow talismans. One grade higher than the yellow talisman was the spirit talisman. This spirit talisman was made from the fur of spirit beasts, and the talisman on the fur was drawn with the blood of spirit beasts. Needless to say, the fur of spirit beasts naturally had certain attributes, and the blood of spirit beasts contained the magical power of spirit beasts. When these two complemented each other, the might of a spirit talisman would be more than 1 level stronger than a yellow talisman. The spirit talisman was divided into high, medium and low grades. There was also the supreme grade spirit talisman. However, although there were many spirit beasts on the Xiaoyu continent, they were all extremely difficult to catch. Therefore, there were very few spirit talismans that could be seen. Even in the time exchange market, there were only a few low-grade spirit talismans. Medium-grade spirit talismans were hard to come by, let alone supreme-grade spirit talismans. Those were only occasionally heard of in some large sects. The next grade higher than the spirit talisman was the jade talisman. As the name implied, this jade talisman was a talisman made from jade stone. Of course, this jade stone was not ordinary jade stone, but the essence of jade stone, commonly known as jade marrow. And what was used to inscribe the talisman in the jade marrow was also not the blood essence of spirit beasts, nor was it a special pigment, but the real heaven and earth's spiritual energy. Speaking of yellow talismans, spirit talismans and jade talismans, they were all used by cultivators to form hand seals and use the heaven and earth's spiritual energy to assist. Usually when cultivators used hand seals, not only did they have to expend their own spiritual energy, they also had to expend time when forming hand seals. If it was a crucial moment in a fight, a little bit of spiritual energy or a moment of time in the latter could be the key to victory or defeat. Therefore, cultivators tried their best to save time and spiritual energy, and these few types of talismans were the methods they came up with. Regardless of whether it was yellow talismans or spirit talismans, they all used yellow paper and spirit beasts' fur as carriers. In advance, they used special pigment and spirit beast's blood essence to draw the talisman. Using the pigment and spirit beast's blood essence to retain the heaven and earth spiritual energy in the talisman. Because of the problem with yellow paper itself, even if spirit beast's blood essence were used to draw the talisman on it, that yellow paper would not be able to contain the heaven and earth spiritual energy in the spirit beast's blood essence. Furthermore, the heaven and earth's spiritual energy contained in the special pigment could not possibly be more than the spirit beast's blood essence. Therefore, this caused the spirit talisman to be much more powerful than the yellow talisman. However, when creating the jade talisman, the heaven and earth spiritual energy was directly injected into the jade essence by forming hand seals. He also said that he wouldn't risk his life so easily. Gong Mingwei sighed and said, but this time he went to the depths of Yellowflower Ridge. If he didn't go there, where else could he go? It seems that last time, Master didn't return for 20 days. Counting with my fingers. It's about time. Zhang Qingxiao lowered her head and thought for a moment before speaking. Master didn't send a message back? Gong Mingwei raised his head and asked Xiaohua. No, Xiaohua shook his head and replied. But, before he could say anything about the communication talisman, they heard a rumbling sound from outside the mountain. What's that sound? Xiaohua's 5 senses were very sensitive, so it was very easy for him to hear it. What sound? Gong Mingwei was stunned. When he listened carefully, an even louder sound was heard. Oh, not good. Someone's attacking our sect protecting formation. Xiao Xinrui's mind was very sharp. As soon as she heard the sound, she realized. Quick, let's go take a look. Zhang Qingxiao didn't say anything else and ran out of the cave. Second brother. Without Master's orders, how can we leave the tranquil cave? Gong Mingwei said anxiously. When Xiao Xinrui heard this, she put down her raised leg. They're already at our doorstep. Do we still have to reflect on our mistakes? Zhang Qingxiao didn't care about this. After running out of the tranquil cave, she turned around and asked, Junior sister, where's the flying talisman? Please ask eldest senior brother and senior sister to leave quickly. If the sect master asks, just say that I saw someone attacking our sect and asked senior brother and senior sister to leave. Xiaohua was also a little anxious. He had been at Tranquil Cave for 3 years, but he had never seen anyone attack Tranquil Cave. When is it your turn to bear the responsibility? Although Gong Mingwei was apprehensive about his master's orders, he wasn't a stubborn person. Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao's faces suddenly darkened as they turned to look at Xiaohua. Xiaohua shouted, "Oh no," and was thinking about how to answer when he heard Jiang Jiantong say again. Sect leader Xiao, please don't blame me. I was just casually asking. I didn't have any intention of urging you. The main reason for this message is... Chapter 1239. Jiang Jiantong of the 100 Herbs Gate said, Sect Master Xiao, my 100 Herbs Gate received a report yesterday that the 10,000 Poisons Gate might attack your sect in the near future. Of course, this information is not confirmed. The exact time is still unknown. Therefore, I hope that Sect Master Xiao will pay more attention. If there really is any movement, please send a message to my 100 Herbs Gate. Now that our two sects have formed an alliance, my 100 Herbs Gate naturally has the right to rescue Shang Huaming. It is also my 100 Herbs Gate's duty. We have already formed an alliance with the 100 Herbs Gate? Zhang Qingxiao looked at Xiaohua in surprise. Xiao Xinrui's face was flushed and she looked at Xiaohua without blinking. Eldest senior brother, as long as you know, he didn't say anything. Xiaohua shrugged and smiled bitterly. Then he realized, this communication talisman must have arrived a long time ago. It's just that I didn't notice and just received it? Yes, it should be. This 10,000 Poisons Gate dares to have ideas about Shang Huaming. Their intentions are worthy of death. Gong Mingwei nodded slightly. He didn't know what to feel. Senior sister, since the 100 Herbs Gate is our alliance, then why don't you hurry up and send a message? Let them come quickly. Xiaohua didn't like the 100 Herbs Gate, but at this point he could only ask for their help. Xiao Xinrui's face was slightly hot. She looked at the 2 Foundation establishment experts of the 10,000 Poisons Gate and smiled bitterly. 100 Herbs Gate. Isn't it thousands of miles away from Shang Huaming? He don't have enough power to send this communication talisman to 100 Herbs Gate. Furthermore, there are Foundation establishment experts outside the formation. The messaging talisman hasn't even flown for a moment before the sect's protective formation is about to be broken by them. What should we do? Xiaohua panicked and said anxiously. Forget it, let's throw caution to the wind. Eldest senior brother, go out and kill those Qi refining level 6 and 7 brats. Drag a few of them down with us. Zhang Qingxiao said fiercely. Forget it. Gong Mingwei scolded. There are Foundation establishment experts outside. If you and I go out, we are just ants. How can we drag people down with us? Right now the most important thing is to use the sect-protecting grand formation to guard the door of Shanghuaming and wait for Master to return. Perhaps 100 Herbs Gate will receive more detailed information and come to our aid on account of our alliance with Master. Zhang Qingxiao bit her lips. Her eyes were wide open and her fists were clenched. She knew that what Gong Mingwei said was reasonable, but she still muttered a few words and kept her opinion to herself. Eldest senior brother. Without waiting for Xiaohua to speak, there was a loud rumbling sound. It was as if the heavens and earth were shaking. Everyone's figures swayed a little. The mirror outside was immediately shattered, and the white fog gradually dissipated. This is bad. Quick, let's inject all our magic power into this magical artifact. Gong Mingwei's expression changed greatly. He let out a loud roar and silently channeled his magic power into the jade pendant in his hand. Xiao Xinrui and Zhang Qingxiao did not dare to be negligent. They both poured their spiritual power into the jade pendant. The jade pendant instantly emitted a dazzling brilliance. When it was a little dazzling, the brilliance divided into 3 rays and shot towards different directions of the array. Rumble. Another loud sound rang out. This time the sound was indeed earth-shattering, but the movement was much quieter. At the very least no one was shaken and the white fog slowly returned to its original state. Xiaohua saw the 3 injecting their magic power into the jade pendant and hurried forward, ready to follow suit. But Gong Mingwei shouted, "Xiaohua, you must not join. Our magic power is similar and since childhood our minds are connected. The 3 of us can use this jade pendant. If you join us, I'm afraid there will be a mistake. Moreover, your magic power is weak, so it won't be of much use." When it came to since childhood our minds are connected, not only Gong Mingwei but also Zhang Qingxiao felt a burst of sweetness in their hearts. That's right. Xiaohua, just watch from the side. Watch how the 3 immortals of Shanghuaming defeat the evildoers of the 10,000 Poisons sect. The 3 immortals of Shanghuaming was a playful name that Gong Mingwei, Zhang Qingxiao and Xiao Xinrui used when they were young. When they grew older they knew that this name didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, so they didn't dare to say it casually. At this time, Zhang Qingxiao was in a good mood and seemed to think of the beauty of the 3 little innocent girls when they were young. Xiao Xinrui's mouth was slightly smiling and the corners of her eyes were curved. She almost wanted to rebuke. Sigh, seeing the 3 of them like this, Xiaohua's heart also had an indescribable feeling. He was even more determined to plant the absorption fruit and exquisite grass. Moreover, he had also thought it through. Not only these spiritual herbs, as long as his 2 senior brothers and senior sister, no, as long as they needed any rare spiritual herbs, as long as they could grow it, he would definitely give it to them. He wouldn't let his eldest senior brother, second senior brother and senior sister be separated. He wouldn't let the sect leader worry about the matter of medicinal pills. And he wouldn't let Shanghuaming be bullied by the other sects of the Dawn Rain continent. Boom boom boom, with 3 loud sounds in a row, Shanghuaming's sect-protecting formation shook violently. The ground under Xiaohua's feet also shook. Xiaohua jumped up and floated in the air. Gong Mingwei and the other 2 looked at each other, their eyes full of horror. Their figures floated up and the magic power in their hands poured into the jade pendant as if it didn't cost money. Outside the formation, in addition to the several qi refining disciples who were still relentlessly attacking, the so-called Protector Liao and Protector Zhen also took out their own magic tools. Protector Liao was holding a human-shaped celestial artifact in his hand. The celestial artifact was in the shape of a woman with ample breasts and plump buttocks. Her 2 pink arms were stretched out on top of her head, holding a black bead. Protector Liao's hand was holding the human-shaped magic tool's waist. She sent her magic power, and a thin black gas was released from the black bead, shooting directly above the white fog of Shanghuaming's sect-protecting formation. This black gas seemed to be the nemesis of the white fog. When it came into contact, not only did the white fog dissipate a lot, but even the formation also shook, making a rumbling sound. Ha! Protector Liao, your jade-like beauty doesn't seem to be useful. Protector Zhen on the side saw that Protector Liao's attacks didn't have any significant effect and couldn't help but laugh. This is nothing. Protector Liao's charming eyes were like silk and her face was crimson. She smiled tenderly and said, "I'm just warming up." As he spoke, he reached out and took out a red silk bag from his waist. He untied it, revealing a pink ball-shaped thing inside. This ball-shaped thing was hollow and there were many triangular holes on the surface. It looked like a child's toy. Corpse poison butterfly? Seeing Protector Liao take out the small ball, Protector Jin smiled and said, "This little thing can break the formation?" Protector Liao threw a flirtatious glance and said with a smile, "If it doesn't, then I'll ask Brother Jin to help." As he spoke, he muttered an incantation and pointed his finger. The small ball flickered and hundreds of butterflies with colorful wings flapped out of the triangular hole in the small ball. They grew bigger and bigger until they were the size of a palm. Then they flew towards the white mist above Yellow Flower Ridge. The corpse poison butterfly was indeed useful. It flew above the white fog and quietly stopped in the air. It was unknown what kind of magic the corpse poison butterfly used, but the white fog around it began to gradually disappear. However, it was a pity that the white mist disappeared extremely quickly at the beginning, but its speed soon decreased. Moreover, the number of corpse poison butterflies was still too small. Only 100-foot wide area of the formation was affected. The other areas didn't have much of a change. How can this work? Your corpse poison butterfly is more like an itch. Protector Jin rubbed his head and said when he saw this. "You're laughing at me. I already said that I'm going to cooperate with you. Why don't I see you using your spear?" Protector Liao twisted her waist and the lines of her body also moved. It was very charming. "Okay, here I come." Protector Jin laughed wildly. He patted the storage bag on his waist and said, "I'll let you taste the power of my immovable golden spear." Sure enough, as he moved his hand, he took out a golden spear from his storage bag. Protector Jin then took out a few yellow talismans from his storage bag. He poured his magic power into the golden spear, and the golden spear suddenly became 2 feet long. "Watch me." Protector Jin leaped into the air, and the enlarged spear in his hand thrust forward. Like a phoenix nodding its head, it struck Shang Huaming's sect protecting formation 3 times in a row. The golden spear was very light in Protector Jin's hand, but when it struck the formation, it was as heavy as a mountain. Dong. 3 consecutive sounds shook the formation. What should I do? Inside the formation, Xiaohua flew in the air. His heart calmed down and his mind spun rapidly. He wanted to find a way to deal with this. He also knew that Gong Mingwei was right. His cultivation was too low and he really couldn't do anything. In a situation where 3 10th layer qi refining cultivators were exhausted, he could only stand to the side and watch. I have to do something. Xiaohua frowned slightly. He now wished that he could reach the 10th layer of qi refining or foundation establishment in an instant. However, what could Xiaohua, who was only in the 1st layer of qi refining, do? At this moment there was another strong vibration. Protector Jin, who was outside the formation, saw that his golden spear had no effect. He unconsciously became angry and threw the golden spear high up. He recited a spell and poured all his magic power into the spear. When the spear expanded several times, he pointed his finger. The golden spear was swung down like an arm and directly smashed into the formation. When Protector Liao saw this, he also waved the beauty-like jade in his hand. Thick black gas flew out, aimed at the position below the golden spear and directly sprayed it. With a loud bang, the black gas and the golden spear hit the same position of the formation at the same time. The formation shook for a while and the white fog disappeared, revealing the flowers, grass and mountain rocks under the formation. Even Xiaohua and the other 3 could see clearly. At this time, Gong Mingwei, Zhang Qingxiao and Xiao Xinrui had been separated by the shock. The jade pendant had dimmed, and it flew out of Gong Mingwei's hand and floated in the air. Aha, I didn't expect Shang Huaming's formation to be so easy to break. Why didn't the other protectors in the sect snatch such a good job from us? Protector Jin laughed. Isn't it because Protector Jin is lucky? Shang Huaming's Xiao Yuehong is not in the sect, and there are only 4 little things presiding over the formation. This formation. I'm afraid it won't be so easy to break. Chapter 1240. Just as Protector Jin and Protector Liao of the 10,000 Poisons sect were attacking Shang Huaming's sect protecting formation, in the west of Yellow Flower Ridge in the distant sky, behind layers of clouds, a flying shuttle was hiding its whereabouts. It was Jiang Jiantong and Jiang Fan of the 100 Herbs sect. Father, should we take advantage of this time to make a move? At this time, Jiang Fan was no longer in a daze in front of Xiao Xinrui. His eyes were fixed on the dim yellow flower ridge in the distance, and he whispered, if we let the two Foundation establishment experts of the 10,000 Poison sect attack for a while longer, Shang Huaming's great formation may really be broken. Jiang Jiantong was very satisfied with Jiang Fan's calmness. He smiled and said, yes Fan, I thought you were fascinated by the beauty of the Xiao girl and would go to rescue her at all costs. Looking at how you deal with things now, it's far from what I expected. Father, you praise me. This is all because you taught me well. As a cultivator, the goal is to improve our cultivation and seek longevity. Beauty and companions are just worldly possessions. The Xiao girl is attractive to boy, but compared with the Great Way, it's still not enough. Father, you can rest assured about this. Jiang Fan said with a smile. Well then Father can rest assured. Jiang Jiantong nodded, then looked into the distance and said, Fan, don't underestimate Shang Huaming. Although they only have 3.5 disciples and the whole sect only has 5 people, they have been in existence for a long time. Our 100 Herbs sect can't compare with them. According to the records in the sect, Shang Huaming's disciples are sparse, and the number of people in the sect has never exceeded 100. Think about it, if such a small sect doesn't have any trump cards, how can it survive on the Dawn Rain continent? Father, you mean Shang Huaming's sect protecting formation is far from being as weak as we thought? Jiang Fan looked carefully into the distance, somewhat puzzled. Perhaps. This is a formation laid down by a gold core cultivator. Although the two protectors of the 10,000 Poison sect are both at the Foundation establishment stage, it won't be easy for them to break through it. Jiang Jiantong said with a smile as he stroked his beard. Jiang Jiantong looked very young, but he was actually older than Xiao Yuehong. He was already more than 110 years old. It was only because he had been using the youth-retaining items of 100 Herbs Gate all year round that he managed to maintain his youthful appearance. Although he was older than Xiao Yuehong, his cultivation level was slightly lower than Xiao Yuehong's. Furthermore, the secret cultivation method of the 100 Herbs sect only allowed one to reach the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Jiang Jiantong's cultivation level had been stuck at the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm for many years. Unless there was an accident or a fortuitous encounter, it was likely that he would not be able to make any further breakthroughs in this lifetime. Thinking back to his past self who was in high spirits and then looking at his own son, how similar were they? For the sake of the future of Spirit Grass Gate, Jiang Jiantong had no choice but to think of something else. However, today is also strange. A few days ago I sent a messaging talisman to Shang Huaming. That messaging talisman was never put into Shang Huaming's body. It was only put in just before the 10,000 Poison sect attacked. Also, the 10,000 Poison sect has been attacking for so long. Why hasn't Xiao Yuehong shown himself? He's at the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm, a bit more powerful than me. Although Xiao Yuehong can't kill the two early-stage Foundation establishment guardians of the 10,000 Poison sect, it's only right for him to scare them and expel them. Could it be that Xiao Yuehong isn't at Yellow Flower Ridge? Father is right. I'm afraid the 10,000 Poison sect has received news that sect leader Xiao isn't at Shang Huaming, so they've come to attack. Jiang Fan laughed. It seemed he wasn't too worried about Shang Huaming or Xiao Xinrui's safety. That shouldn't be the case. Father's messaging talisman was for Xiao Yuehong. If it reached Shang Huaming, that means Xiao Yuehong is at Shang Huaming. Could it be that Xiao Yuehong has the idea of catching a turtle in a jar? Jiang Jiantong was very puzzled. And that's not the most strange thing. Then what is it? Jiang Fan was stunned and turned around to ask. It's been 3 years since the war between immortals and devils ended. In the demon-resisting valley, all the experts of the Dawn Rain continent have returned to their respective sects to recuperate. The war of immortals and devils has always been a great calamity for the experts of my Dawn Rain continent. If they didn't increase their cultivation in the demon-resisting valley, then they would perish in the demon-resisting valley. The power structure of the Dawn Rain continent is bound to be turbulent and change. However, this should be a matter of 10 years after the War of Immortals and Devils. Currently there should still be 7 years left. The Shang Huaming and our 100 Herbs sect are just small sections. Even if we're affected, that's 10 years later. There's no reason for someone to have designs on Shang Huaming now. This 10,000 Poisons sect. I can't see through them. Yes, father is right. And if the 10,000 Poisons sect really wants to capture Shang Huaming, they can't just send 2 early-stage Foundation establishment guardians, can they? Jiang Fan came to a realization and said, Boy may not know sect leader Zhao's cultivation, but how could the 10,000 Poisons sect not know? Oh, father, boy understands. You didn't let them take action, but... Jiang Fan slapped his forehead and looked at Jiang Jiantong with great admiration. Father, do you know that the 10,000 Poisons sect definitely has a backup plan and strong reinforcements, so, haha, that's exactly the case. The cultivation world is a deep pool. There are hidden dragons and crouching tigers. The 10,000 Poisons sect definitely wouldn't send 2 guardians to Shang Huaming for no reason. If they have any ulterior motives, they'll definitely go all out. If we go out now and Xiao Yuehong doesn't show up, won't we become Shang Huaming's shield? Boy understands. Also, the situation on the Dawn Rain continent is delicate now. Everyone is enduring silently and wants to fade out of the view of others and avoid 10 years of disputes. Even if the 10,000 Poisons sect has designs on Shang Huaming, our 100 Herbs sect has to carefully consider before participating. Otherwise, if other large sects see us, we might suffer an unexpected disaster. Boy understands. Jiang Jiantong looked back at the 2 elders and several disciples sitting cross-legged at the back of the flying shuttle and said with a smile, Let's wait and see. Everything is just speculation. The situation is unpredictable. The disciples and elders that our 100 Herbs sect brought this time are comparable to the 10,000 Poisons sect in front of us. Even if we want to take action, we have to wait for Xiao Yuehong to show up. Only then will we have a chance of victory. Compared to the leisurely Jiang Jiantong and the others on the flying shuttle, Shang Huaming's Xiao Hua and the others were panicking. Seeing Gong Mingwei, Zhang Qingxiao and Xiao Xinrui being sent flying, Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. He steadied himself and flew toward the jade pendant in midair. He grabbed it and poured his magic power into it. The jade pendant's originally dim brilliance gradually recovered with Xiao Hua's magic power. Several faint rays of light shot toward Shang Huaming's sect protecting formation, and the disappeared white mist slowly reappeared. Of course, Xiao Hua's magic power was still far inferior to Gong Mingwei and the others. Xiao Hua used all his strength to stabilize the formation, which was on the verge of collapse. Ah, Protector Zhen sneered. He looked at the blurred scene inside the formation and said, A mere qi condensation stage child dares to go against my will? With that, a hideous smile appeared on his ugly face. The magic power in his body surged and he pointed at the golden spear in the air. The golden spear danced for a while and then shot toward the formation. Zidi. The originally clear sky suddenly darkened. Countless dark clouds appeared above Yellow Flower Ridge for no reason. Within the dark clouds, faint flashes of lightning could be seen. Not only was the brilliance emitted, but even the sound of thunder could be heard. Protector Zhen was stunned. The golden spear in the air unconsciously stopped. What's going on? The change in the weather happened in an instant. It was far beyond his imagination. Protector Liao, who was behind Protector Zhen, screamed in disbelief. When Protector Zhen turned around and followed. No, he didn't even need to follow Protector Liao's finger. In the sky to the west of Yellow Flower Ridge, there was a huge cloud and mist. Within the cloud and mist, a rather large dragon head poked out of the cloud and mist. 2 huge lantern-like eyes flickered with a ferocious expression as they stared at the 2 protectors. Behind the dragon head, a thick and meandering dragon body covered in huge scales swayed in the cloud and mist. A flood dragon? How is this possible? Protector Zhen was an expert in raising poisonous creatures in the 10,000 Poisons sect. He had a certain understanding of the demon beasts of the Dawn Rain continent. He had never thought that he would be able to see a so-called flood dragon with his own eyes. No, this isn't a flood dragon. In his shock, Protector Zhen suddenly saw the huge horn on the dragon's head that hadn't formed yet. He looked at it carefully. The entire dragon's head was vivid and lifelike, but it was obviously a little blurry. Between the flickering lights, he could vaguely see the snake's head under the dragon's head. A giant python that has transformed into a flood dragon. Protector Jin came to his senses, but he looked at the thunderclaps in the sky with a puzzled expression. A giant python with a profound cultivation base could transform into a flood dragon, but he had never heard of a flood dragon that was accompanied by thunder and mist when it appeared. How could he be thinking at this moment? Protector Jin shouted, "Let's go." The cultivation base of this giant python that has transformed into a flood dragon is comparable to that of a nascent soul realm cultivator. It's not something we can compare with. As he spoke, he pointed his finger. The golden spear turned into a golden light and flew to Protector Jin's feet. Just as Protector Jin's voice sounded, an incomparable pressure came from the dragon's head. Protector Jin's heart turned cold. He didn't even dare to scan with his divine sense or look at the dragon's head. He activated his magic power, and the golden spear under his feet trembled slightly and was about to fly into the sky. Protector Liao was in an even worse state. When the pressure of the flood dragon came, she actually fell from the sky. She had only fallen for about 3 meters when a big red brocade handkerchief wrapped around her curvaceous body. After a slight pause, she was also shot into the air. The 2 protectors of the 10,000 Poison sect fled for their lives, but when they looked at the flood dragon, their eyes were filled with endless mockery. The dragon opened its mouth, and an incomparably cold water-blue brilliance swept towards the 2 protectors. The brilliance was very fast. Protector Liao and Protector Jin had only flown a few feet when the brilliance caught up with them. Before they could do anything, an incredible scene occurred. Chapter 1241. The aqua-blue light swept past the 2 enforcers. The 2 enforcers immediately froze in midair. Then different lights flashed from their bodies and they were annihilated. Then a thin layer of ice appeared on their bodies. The layer of ice changed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, it turned from a thin layer to several inches. They became 2 ice cubes in midair. The 2 protectors had actually been frozen in this block of ice. Through the transparent ice, one could see the 2 enforcers' terrified expressions and disbelief. The golden spear under Enforcer Jin's feet and the red handkerchief on Enforcer Liao's body were both frozen in ice, losing their luster. The other aura refining disciples attacking the Great Formation were even worse off. They tried to escape as soon as the flood dragon appeared, but how could their flying talismans compare to the 2 enforcers' magical weapons? When the aqua-blue light swept past, they were all frozen in midair. Gotcha! A golden lightning bolt fell from the sky and struck the left side of the flood dragon. The flood dragon's eyes were filled with reverence. Its head looked up at the sky, then it opened its mouth and blew forward. Bang bang! A series of sounds rang out. The 2 enforcers of the 10,000 Poison sect and several aura refining disciples were all blasted apart. Their bodies and the ice exploded into tiny pieces, scattering into the air and disappearing without a trace. Even the so-called golden spear and embroidered handkerchief had disappeared without a trace. Rumble! Another wave of thunder roared. The flood dragon was shocked. It twisted its body and its huge body and head quickly shrank. As the flood dragon shrank, the endless dark clouds and lightning in the sky also gradually disappeared. When the flood dragon turned into a small white snake, the clouds and lightning also disappeared, and the sky became clear once again. This little white snake was actually Xiao Hua's little white. Little white descended from the sky. Its snake tongue extended and retracted, and it looked behind the clouds where the 100 Herbs sect was. Then with a twist of its body, it shot into the Great Formation protecting sect like a flash of lightning, disappearing in the blink of an eye. After the time it takes to drink a cup of tea behind the clouds in the distance, on the flying shuttle of the 100 Herbs gate, Jiang Fan finally breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at the similarly dumbfounded Jiang Jiantong, he said in a low voice, "Father. Shu, this isn't the place to talk." Jiang Jiantong immediately stopped her. He formed an incantation gesture and sent his magic power into the flying shuttle. The flying shuttle quietly flew bit by bit into the distance. Only after flying for a long time did Jiang Jiantong dare to increase the speed. After a while, Jiang Fan finally asked, "Father, is that Shang Huaming's guardian demon beast?" When Jiang Jiantong heard this, he slowed down the speed of the flying shuttle and handed it over to an elder beside him to control. Only then did he smile bitterly and say, Fan is there still a need to say this? If it wasn't Shang Huaming's guardian demonic beast, which demonic beast would be so bored as to come and kill people? This demonic beast looks like a flood dragon. Seems that. I've only heard that the Taiching sect's guardian demon beast is a flood dragon whose cultivation is comparable to a nascent soul cultivator. How could Shang Huaming have such a powerful demon beast? Jiang Fan was still in disbelief. I've never heard of it before. This is also the first time I've seen it. Jiang Jiantong also smiled bitterly and said, no wonder Shang Huaming has a long history and only a few disciples are not afraid of the risk of the sect being destroyed. It turns out that they have such a powerful flood dragon protecting the sect. Looking at the pressure of this flood dragon, even if it's not at the nascent soul level, it's not far from it. Isn't that so? The Taiching sect's flood dragon is only at the nascent soul level. Shang Huaming's can't possibly surpass the Taiching sect's. This is even better. With Xiao Yuehong's strength, our 100 Herbs sect's alliance with Shang Huaming will have more prospects. Jiang Jiantong's eyes flashed with a strange light. He looked at Jiang Fan and said, although our plan may need to be adjusted slightly, it seems like this is a rare opportunity. Maybe Shang Huaming's cultivation method is not only at the golden core stage. Jiang Fan said with a smile. Yes, we must have a good relationship with Shang Huaming. Fan immediately ask Fan to send a message to Xiao Yuehong's girl, or you can go and visit her in person. This is very important, you can't be careless. Boy understands. Xiao Xinrui is still shy because it's her first awakening of love. Let sister invite her to the 100 Herbs sect first. After long time boy will be sure. Good. Jiang Jiantong stroked his chin and was very satisfied with Jiang Fan's answer. He smiled and said, just that demonic beast comparable to the golden core stage. Everything we do is worth it. What Jiang Jiantong didn't know was that, just as they were carefully driving the flying shuttle to escape, a faint brilliance flashed in the air not far behind them. A tall, handsome Taoist with a white face and no beard appeared out of thin air. He looked at the brilliance of the flying shuttle and snorted. 100 Herbs sect wants to ally with Shang Huaming? Some insignificant small sects really have a lot of ideas. Then he turned his head and looked at the restored Shang Huaming formation and frowned. Why does the flood dragon have a cultivation comparable to that of a divine transformation stage cultivator? The one in the Taiching sect is only a nascent soul stage cultivator. With us here, this great formation should be fine. Gong Mingwei thought for a moment and said, yes, senior martial brother. Xiao Xinrui nodded and took out a spirit stone from her storage bag. She sat cross-legged and absorbed the spirit energy of heaven and earth inside. After the time it took to eat a meal, the outside was still calm. Even Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao took their hands off the jade pendant. Xiao Xinrui opened her eyes and took the jade pendant from Xiao Hua's hand. She muttered something and her fingers formed a seal. Then she waved the jade pendant and a mirror appeared in front of everyone. The place where the protectors of the 10,000 Poisons sect were just now was reflected in the mirror. Strange, why is there no one? There's no trace of them at all. Xiao Xinrui felt strange when she saw that everything was as calm as usual. She looked around Shang Huaming's body, but she didn't find anything wrong. What's going on? Xiao Hua was also puzzled. He almost wanted to go out and see what was going on. Of course, he immediately thought that this might be the 10,000 Poison sect's plan to lure the snake out of its hole. But they almost destroyed the Great Formation just now. Is there still a need to lure the snake out of its hole? Xiao Hua thought again. Gong Mingwei and the others obviously had the same idea. However, no one dared to go out and release the Great Formation. In the end, everyone decided to wait and see. Of course, in order to deal with the sudden change, the three of them decided not to return to the Tranquil Cave. They all stayed behind the Great Formation. If the 10,000 Poison sect made any moves, they would be able to react in time. Contrary to Xiao Hua and the others' expectations, another 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Not a single person from the 10,000 Poison sect showed up. The entire Yellow Flower Ridge was as peaceful as before, causing the four of them to scratch their heads in confusion. They really couldn't understand why the 10,000 Poisons sect was attacking so anticlimactic. At the same time, Xiao Hua and the others were even more worried about Shang Huaming's sect leader, Xiao Yuehong. There had been no news from him for more than a month. They didn't know what had happened in the depths of Yellow Flower Ridge. Chapter 1242. On this day it was already late in the morning. Xiao Hua and the other three sat cross-legged looking at each other. No one dared to speak. Everyone's eyes were filled with anxiety, but no one could do anything. Suddenly, a red light flashed and a communication talisman fell from the sky and landed in front of Xiao Xinrui. Master, a message from Sect Master? Xiao Hua jumped up and looked at the communication talisman in front of Xiao Xinrui excitedly. Although no one knew the contents of the communication talisman, it meant that Xiao Yuehong was fine. How could they not be happy? Father is injured. When Xiao Xinrui picked up the communication talisman, she crushed the light and heard Xiao Yuehong's voice. Her expression changed greatly. Where did he come from? How is his injury? Gong Mingwei asked quickly. Father didn't say the specific injury. He only said that he would be back soon and asked us to hold on for a while. Xiao Xinrui's expression was uncertain. Hold on for a while? Zhang Qingxiao was a little stunned. Master, he didn't just receive the communication talisman, did he? Let's go to the depths of Yellow Flower Ridge. Maybe we can meet Master. Gong Mingwei made a prompt decision. He threw out a flying talisman and flew up first. When Xiao Hua was about to leave, he heard Gong Mingwei say, Xiao Hua, don't go. You just stay here and guard. If there is any movement, immediately send a message to us. With that, Xiao Xinrui threw down a communication talisman. Yes, little brother understands. Xiao Hua took the flying talisman and put it in his arms. He watched the three of them fly into the depths of Yellow Flower Ridge. The direction was exactly where Xiao Yuehong went. After the three of them disappeared, Xiao Hua sat down cross-legged and focused his attention on the space behind his head. Inside the space, the small medicinal field that was arranged by the puppet was growing luxuriantly at this moment. The light ball in the space was still constantly rotating, and the radiance that was constantly sprinkled evenly on the various spiritual grasses in the medicinal field. It was just as Xiao Hua thought. In the 30 days, the spiritual herbs in the space had been more than 30 years old. Although Xiao Hua had never seen a real 30-year-old spiritual herb, during the 3 years he had been in Songhua Underworld, he had taken care of the medicinal field while doing some chores. In his free time he had also read some ancient books in Songhua Underworld sect. Shang Huaming's records were divided into two types. One was a jade slip made of jade and other materials. It was specialized in recording large amounts of information. Furthermore, Shang Huaming's unique restrictions could be placed on the jade slip to prevent the disciples of other sects from spying on it. This kind of jade slip could only be read by those with divine sense. And divine sense was a divine ability that only late-stage qi refining disciples could possess. The books that Xiao Hua was looking at were of the second type. They were similar to the books that were commonly seen in the secular world. However, some of them were recorded on paper while others were recorded on special silk. Cultivators were different from the people of the secular world. Not only were their lifespans long, their inheritances were even longer. Some of the inheritances were recorded using special silk and special brushes and inks in order to be preserved generation after generation. From Shang Huaming's records, Xiao Hua had learned a lot of spiritual herb planting and basic alchemy techniques. Unfortunately, in cherishing Flower Peak's medicinal field, the oldest one was an absorption fruit that was more than 10 years old. He had never seen one that was more than 20 years old. As for alchemy, Xiao Hua's cultivation was only at the first stage of the qi refining realm. Those alchemy techniques were all rote memorization, and he didn't even have the slightest chance to put them into practice. Compared to Shang Huaming's records, Xiao Hua looked at the top of the 1-foot-tall, dark green, bamboo-like spiritual herb in the space. There was a thumb-sized fruit that was so red that it had already turned purple. He couldn't help but be delighted. This was precisely the appearance of an absorption fruit that was more than 30 years old. The absorption fruit grew at the top of the absorption grass. When the absorption grass was 10 years old, it would grow into an absorption fruit. At that time the absorption fruit would be the size of a bean and green. After the absorption grass grew into an absorption fruit, it would no longer change. It would only absorb the essence of the world's origin energy and send it to the absorption fruit at the top. As it grew, the absorption fruit would gradually grow bigger, and its eyes would also gradually turn red. A 20-year-old absorption fruit should be the size of a thumb and pure red. Only after another 10 years of growth would this absorption fruit turn purple. And the purple absorption fruit was precisely the main ingredient for refining the Peiyuan pill. After looking at the main absorption fruit, Xiaohua looked at the other spiritual herbs. They also had the same appearance of being 30 years old. Even the parasol peak grass and blood-devouring grass used to refine the parasol celestial pill. These ordinary spiritual herbs that were usually only used for a few years, were now terrifyingly old. If sect master saw this, wouldn't he be so shocked that his jaw would drop? Xiaohua was somewhat proud of himself. If a 30-year-old spiritual herb was used to refine the parasol celestial pill, then its efficacy, how astonishing would it be? The next time senior marshal brother and senior marshal sister go to E-City, I'm afraid that they will really be snatched away by someone. The corners of Xiaohua's mouth revealed a smile. He couldn't help but think of these things that were both funny and exciting. Unfortunately, it had only been 30 days, and there still wasn't any movement in the area of the exquisite grass. The seeds of the exquisite grass hadn't sprouted. However, Xiaohua's heart was also calm. He already had a 30-year-old absorption fruit, so how could he not have a 300-year-old exquisite grass? The cultivation period was long, and although he was still in the first layer of the aura refining realm, he could still wait for a year. Oh right, I have to put the puppet back in the medicinal field. If sect master suddenly went to the medicinal field, it would be hard to explain. Looking at the puppet standing beside the medicinal field in high spirits, Xiaohua suddenly came to a realization. Also, sect master told me to use the puppet sparingly, afraid that he didn't have enough spirit stones. I've never been stingy. As Xiaohua thought this, he flew to Xihua Peak. When he took the puppet out of the space, he opened the mechanism behind it and took out the spirit stone. Xiaohua couldn't help but frown. It wasn't because the spirit stone had been used up too much, but rather, the spirit stone looked the same as the one he had just put in. It didn't turn white or dim because it had been used for several tens of days. That's strange. I remember that when I used it 3 years ago, I had to give it a spirit stone every 100 days. The sect master gave me the puppet and the spirit stones this time, so he probably took them back when the spirit stones were used up. But why does the spirit stone look like it hasn't been used at all? Xiaohua's eyes turned and widened. The light of the cube, it can't be that it can also replenish the spirit stone in the puppet. My goodness, if that's the case, wouldn't the puppet consume even more of the cube's light if it's inside the space? Xiaohua didn't know when the cube's light would be used up, so he wanted to shine all of the light on the spiritual plants to reduce unnecessary wastage. Okay, I'll leave the puppet here first. After a while, when sect master is refining the Peiyuan pill, I'll send it back to the space. The light of this space is really amazing, it's really like a sun. I'm afraid I'll need more spiritual plants in the future, so there's no harm in expanding the medicinal field. With a whoosh, a summoning talisman flew over. Xiaohua, quickly come to Minxi Peak. It was Xiao Xinrui's voice transmission. Sect master is back. Xiaohua's face was overjoyed. He threw the puppet on the ground and was about to fly up. But after thinking for a moment, he took out a dozen or so purple absorption fruits from the space and put them in a jade bottle from his room. Only then did he fly up and go straight to Minxi Peak. When he arrived at Minxi Peak in front of Shang Huaming's main hall, he saw a beam of light flying over from not far away. Xiaohua went to meet it. It was Xiao Yuehong's boat-shaped magic tool. Seeing Xiao Yuehong standing upright on the flying boat, Xiaohua's heart warmed slightly. When he looked carefully, he saw that Xiao Yuehong's face was deathly pale, and the Taoist robe he was wearing wasn't the same one he wore when he went out. Presumably, he encountered some danger in the depths of Yellow Flower Ridge. His Taoist robe was also torn. When the flying boat approached and landed on Minxi Peak, Xiaohua took a few steps forward and bowed. Greetings, sect master. Xiao Yuehong was just about to raise his hand when Xiao Xinrui jumped down from the flying boat and reached out to support him. Xiao Yuehong smiled wryly. Little Rui, father was only slightly injured. There's no need for this, right? Then he turned to Xiao Hua and said, "It's fine. Don't worry. As long as sect master is fine, that's good." When Xiao Hua saw this, he felt a great sense of relief. Xiao Xinrui helped Xiao Yuehong off the flying boat. After Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao came down, Gong Mingwei pointed a finger at the flying boat, causing it to rapidly shrink and fall into his hand. Only then did he hand it back to Xiao Yuehong. Even eldest senior brother is in charge of the flying boat. Sect master's injuries aren't light. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. Following which, everyone entered Shang Huaming's main hall. This was a huge hall. At the head of the hall was the sect master's seat. Below him were many seats on the left and right. They were all for the elders, protectors and disciples. At this time Shang Huaming only had 5 people. When they walked into the main hall it was really spacious. Therefore Xiao Yuehong rarely let them come here. However, although Xiao Yuehong's face was pale today, his spirit seemed to be very good. He was actually happy to bring everyone to the main hall. Xiao Yuehong walked to the seat of honor in the middle and sat down. Gong Mingwei and the other 2 also sat down on Xiao Yuehong's left side. Xiao Yuehong looked at Xiao Hua, who was standing, and waved his hand. He pointed to a seat on his right and said with a smile, "Xiao Hua, you also sit." "Sect master, this disciple doesn't dare." Xiao Hua hurriedly bowed and shook his head. "This is the seat of an official disciple of Shang Huaming. This disciple hasn't cultivated to the 3rd layer of qi refining, so this seat can't be taken." "It? Master says you can sit, then you can sit." Xiao Yuehong laughed. "This?" Xiao Hua thought for a moment and still shook his head. "Thank you for your kindness, sect master. Let's wait for a while." You child." Xiao Yuehong seemed to like Xiao Hua's serious temperament very much. He waved his hand and said, "Then come to master's side." "Yes." Xiao Hua accepted the order and walked to Xiao Yuehong's side. "It seems you want to take the Peiyuan pill immediately." Chapter 1243. Although Xiao Yuehong's tone was regretful, the expression on his face was quite proud. When Xiao Hua saw this, his heart ached for no reason. It was as if he saw a kind father showing off to his children the good gift he had found for them. When talking about this precious gift, this kind father only talked about the flaws of the gift. He didn't talk about the hardships he had to go through to obtain this gift. "Father." Xiao Xinrui of course heard this and her eyes turned red. "Disciple is untalented and made master. Work hard." Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao also felt uneasy and stood up. It's okay. Master has been there before. This time it's just a revisit. It's no big deal. It's just that master was careless for a moment. Now didn't I come back safely?" Cough cough. Speaking of this, Xiao Yuehong coughed again. Wait for master to meditate for a while, then I'll open the furnace and refine pills. With these absorption fruits I should be able to refine a few Peiyuan pill. Master, you should rest first. When your injuries are completely under control, it won't be too late to refine the Peiyuan pill. Zhang Qingxiao said emotionally. Time waits for no man. Xiao Yuehong had obviously heard Gong Mingwei and the other 2 talk about how the 10,000 Poisons sect attacked the sect protecting Great Array. Although he didn't know the strangeness, he understood that someone was targeting Shang Huaming. If you don't quickly improve your cultivation, it will be troublesome if the 10,000 Poison sect sends people again. Gong Mingwei and the other 2 had seen the ferocity of the 10,000 Poison sect's attack and knew that what master said was true. They could only nod silently. That sect master. Seeing Xiao Yuehong like this, Xiao Hua didn't dare to hide anything. He was also afraid that if he didn't say it now, it would affect Xiao Yuehong's pill refining in the future. At the same time, he also wanted to quickly improve the cultivation of his senior brothers and sisters to deal with the 10,000 Poisons sect. What's wrong, Xiao Hua? Xiao Yuehong was stunned and turned to look at Xiao Hua. Seeing Xiao Hua hesitating, he smiled and said, "It's okay, this Peiyuan pill should be able to refine more than 3 pills. I'll leave the rest to you." Of course, if master's luck is bad and I can only refine 3 pills, then you won't have a share this time. Don't blame me." "No, sect leader." Xiao Hua was greatly anxious. He repeatedly waved his hand and took out the dozen or so jade bottles from his bosom. He said, "Sect master, disciple didn't mean it that way. This is of course what you instructed disciple to do before you left. Disciple was fortunate enough to not disappoint you and found them from a hidden place in Cherishing Flower Peak." "Oh, not bad." Xiao Yuehong was very gratified. With a wave of his hand, a jade bottle flew into his hand. He didn't open it and only looked at it in his hand. He said with a smile, "Xiao Hua, you're quite considerate. Thank you for your hard work." Xiao Hua wanted to explain, but he knew that the absorption fruit he took out was much stronger than Xiao Yuehong's. For a moment he didn't know how to open his mouth. "Hee, you little brat, when did you pick this thing? Why didn't you tell us?" Zhang Qingxiao scolded with a smile on her face. "Second senior apprentice brother, you've misunderstood. Right after I picked it up, I came across 100 Herbs Gates messaging talisman. Right after that, I was attacked by 10,000 Poisons Gates attack formation. During this period of time, how could I remember these things? If not for Sect Master mentioning it, I would have almost forgotten about it." Xiao Hua explained. What kind of spirit herb is this? We've all played around Cherishing Flower Peak since we were young. I'm afraid there aren't any good spirit herbs." Zhang Qingxiao smiled and picked up a jade bottle. He was also 27 or 28 years old this year. He had grown up in Songhua Ming since he was young. He was older than 30 years old, so he naturally had seen it before. "It's absorption fruit," Xiao Hua answered honestly. "What? Absorption fruit? Other than Cherishing Flower Peak, Songhua Ming has absorption fruit in other places?" Everyone was stunned. Xiao Yuehong and Zhang Qingxiao opened their jade bottles at almost the same time. "Ah?" The two of them sucked in a breath of cold air, stunned on the spot. "What's wrong?" "Father," Xiao Xinrui said curiously. "Second brother, what's going on?" Gong Mingwei also asked curiously. "Take a look." Xiao Yuehong waved his hand, astonishment flashing through his eyes. Gong Mingwei and Xiao Xinrui seemed to understand something. Suppressing the surprise in their hearts, they each picked up a jade bottle. Sure enough, although the two of them were prepared, they were still shocked by the 30-year-old absorption fruit. "Xiao Hua, are these all 30-year-old absorption fruits?" Xiao Xinrui looked at the dozen jade bottles, her voice trembling. Since she could remember, Songhua Ming had never seen so many absorption fruits appear at once. "Yes, senior sister, they are all absorbing fruits that are more than 30 years old." Xiao Hua once again answered honestly. "Where did you pick them?" Xiao Yuehong asked with a frown. Xiao Hua told him one of the places Xiao Bai took him to. "What? There's a small cave there? I played there when I was young. How could I not find it?" Zhang Qingxiao almost jumped up in disbelief. "Second senior brother, if you don't believe me, I'll take you to see it." Xiao Hua said with a smile. "Why would I go there?" Zhang Qingxiao hurriedly waved his hand. "I have to squat down to go in." "I'm not going." Xiao Yuehong thought for a moment and asked, "Then, besides these absorption fruits, are there any other spiritual herbs?" This. Xiao Hua was a bit speechless. He had other spiritual herbs in his space, but he didn't know what Xiao Yuehong wanted. He could only shake his head and say, "It seems that besides these absorption fruits, there are no other spiritual herbs." Oh, Xiao Yuehong was a bit regretful, but then he laughed again. "Look at me, I was a bit carried away. Xiao Hua had such an opportunity to find so many absorption fruits in a secret place. I should be very satisfied. Why would I be greedy for no reason?" "Sect Master, what do you mean?" Xiao Hua understood that Xiao Yuehong might be thinking about the exquisite grass, so he reminded Xiao Yuehong in advance. "It's nothing." Xiao Yuehong waved his hand and said with a smile, "Master worked hard and almost lost his life to get these useless absorption fruits. You, on the other hand, just casually searched around the house and you actually got so many. Although it's good, it's a big problem for Master." Yes, Xiao Yuehong's harvest compared to the things Xiao Hua took out really made Xiao Yuehong feel embarrassed. But after hearing this, Xiao Hua felt that something was wrong and asked, "Why is that?" The absorption fruit is the main ingredient in refining the Peiyuan pill, but it also needs to be combined with the absorption fruit. Our Shanhuiming sect doesn't have this kind of grass. If the absorption fruit I picked is not old enough, I can use other spiritual herbs to replace it. Since you've picked more than 10 absorption fruits, then I'll naturally have to use enough aged black tuber grass. Father, E-City just passed. I'm afraid the next time will be half a year later. This black tubergrass is not easy to find. Well, although the black tubergrass is not rare, it's not easy to find one that is old enough. Fortunately, 10 to 20 years old can be used. We can use other spiritual herbs to exchange for it. Who should we exchange with? Xiao Xinrui just frowned and seemed to think of something, her face blushing for no reason. Naturally, we'll go to the 100 Herbs Gate. Xiao Yuehong waved his hand, and the red message talisman appeared in his hand. The 100 Herbs Gate is good at growing spiritual herbs. They naturally have enough black tubergrass. We can definitely exchange these absorption fruits for the black tubergrass. Then he changed the topic. Furthermore, the fact that the 100 Herbs Gate sent me Shang Huaming a message in advance shows their sincerity in forming an alliance. Now that I, Shang Huaming, have overcome my difficulties, I should inform the 100 Herbs Gate and give my thanks. I'll do as father says. Xiao Xinrui lowered her head and said in a low voice. Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao looked at each other with displeasure. Xiao Hua. Xiao Yuehong shouted. Disciple is here. Go ahead. Although you're not my official disciple, when the leader of the 100 Herb Gate came to visit me, I've already made it clear that I'll take you in as my disciple sooner or later. Therefore, it's not rude for you to come and express your gratitude on my behalf. Also, your two senior brothers and sister still have to maintain the sect-protecting formation, so it's not convenient for them to go out. You've used a flying talisman, so you won't be any slower than them. It's just right for you to go. Hearing this, Xiao Hua smiled and said, Sect Master is right. I'm only a first-level Qi refinement disciple. Even if I encounter the 10,000 Poisons Gate, they won't take me seriously. I'm the most suitable person to go out. Xiao Hua has never been to Yellowflower Ridge. His cultivation is low. I'm afraid he hasn't seen the dangers of the cultivation world. Zhang Qingxiao said worriedly, we don't need to be in a hurry to improve our cultivation. Let's wait for things to calm down first. Hearing this, Xiao Hua was greatly moved. He smiled and said, Many thanks, second senior martial brother. However, little brother has always been a genius at escaping. Even a 10th level Qi refining cultivator wouldn't be able to catch up to little brother, so how could a foundation establishment senior make things difficult for little brother? Besides, second senior brother also saw the 10,000 Poisons Gates attack. I'm afraid it won't end well. It's better to improve our Shang Huaming's strength as soon as possible. Besides, I'm counting on this Peiyuan pill to break through to the first level of Qi refinement. If second senior brother doesn't let me go out, I'll be anxious. Gong Mingwei stared at Xiao Hua for a while, then walked forward and patted him on the shoulder. Go. You'll have to go down the mountain sooner or later. Just treat this as an experience. Remember, if you can't beat them, run. You're only at the first level of Qi refinement, so no matter how you run, it won't be too much. Xiao Xinrui also nodded at Xiao Hua and said, Go early and come back early. Thank you, senior sister. Xiao Hua said with a smile. After the three of them finished talking, Xiao Yuehong took out a stack of flying talismans and some other yellow talismans from his storage bag and handed them over. He said, Your cultivation is low, so you can only use these yellow talismans. On the way, you just need to fly. It's best if you don't use the other yellow talismans, especially the cultivators from other sections. If you don't provoke them and avoid them, there shouldn't be any problems. Disciple understands. Xiao Hua put away the yellow talismans and cupped his hands. Disciple will go to the 100 Herbs Gate now? And go now. Xiao Yuehong nodded and poured a strand of transcendence energy into the summoning talisman of the 100 Herbs Gate. The summoning talisman flew up with a whoosh and turned into a crimson light that flew out of Shang Huaming's formation. Master has already told you in the summoning talisman that you're going. Chapter 1244. 100 Herbs Gates. Yao Nong Peak was indeed very far from Shang Huaming's Yellowflower Ridge. It was more than 3,000 miles away. Xiao Hua's round trip would probably take 3 or 4 days. Leaving the protection of Shang Huaming's great formation and relying on his own strength to gain experience in the Dawn Rain continent for 4 days, this was a kind of test for Xiao Hua. However, this was also Xiao Yuehong's last resort. If it was a normal day, Xiao Yuehong would definitely go personally for such an important matter. At the very least he would let Xiao Xinrui represent him. But now Xiao Yuehong was injured and the 10,000 Poison sect was coveting him outside. He could only rely on Shang Huaming's great formation to deal with them. Xiao Xinrui and the other two were only in the 10th layer of the qi refining realm. In front of the 10,000 Poison sect's foundation establishment protectors, they were like babies. If he considered the urgency of the matter, he could only let Xiao Hua take the risk. In fact, the most important thing was that Xiao Yuehong and the others knew that although Xiao Hua's cultivation was low, after using the flying talisman, his speed was a bit faster than Xiao Xinrui and the others. Instead of letting Xiao Xinrui and the others go, it was better to let Xiao Hua go. In particular, the flying speed was disproportionate to the cultivation level, which was very contrary to common sense. This kind of unexpected trump card would of course have an unexpected effect. Moreover, although the distance from Shang Huaming to the 100 Herbs Gate was quite far, it was a flat road all the way. There were no deep mountains or treacherous rivers, no powerful demonic beasts and no big sections. Xiao Hua was just a mediocre cultivation disciple, so he didn't attract much attention. It was precisely because of this that Xiao Yuehong didn't even give him a storage pouch. He only let him put everything in his bosom to avoid attracting the greed of others. Xiao Yuehong carefully opened Shang Huaming's great formation and flew out with Xiao Hua. Looking at Xiao Hua's back that was indeed faster than Gong Mingwei and the others, he couldn't help but think. Father. Xiao Xinrui was a bit worried. Letting Xiao Hua go out like this. Aren't we too busy? After all, he's only 18 years old and has just reached the first layer of the qi refining realm. Xiao Rui, can you fly as fast as Xiao Hua? If you and Xiao Hua met a 12th layer qi refining expert at the same time, do you think they would let you or Xiao Hua go? Xiao Yuehong asked calmly. Xiao Xinrui was a bit speechless. Don't ask so many questions. Junior sister, what master said makes sense. Xiao Hua's cultivation is so shallow, as long as you don't provoke him, others definitely won't lower themselves to his level. Zhang Qingxiao laughed. That's not necessarily true. Xiao Xinrui retorted. There are too many unreasonable people in Yi City. Who knows what kind of people Xiao Hua will meet? Xiao Hua is a lucky person. Maybe he won't encounter anything along the way. Gong Mingwei also agreed with Xiao Yuehong's opinion. That's right. He was able to find the absorption fruit in such a secretive place. His luck isn't something an ordinary person can compare to. Zhang Qingxiao really couldn't imagine that the place where she had played since she was a child actually hid such a good thing. Second brother, go take a look right now. The place Xiao Hua spoke of. Does it have? Xiao Yuehong interrupted them and instructed. There was no need for that. Xiao Hua has already picked it, why should I go? Zhang Qingxiao said with a sad face. Go now. Xiao Yuehong's expression suddenly changed. Yes, master. Seeing Xiao Yuehong get angry for a long time, Zhang Qingxiao shrunk her neck and quickly flew away. Seeing this, Xiao Xinrui rolled her eyes and whispered, Father, you don't think. Xiao Yuehong glanced at him, sighed and no longer spoke. Not long after, Zhang Qingxiao resentfully returned and reported, Master, the place Xiao Hua spoke of has been found. There is a small trace of being picked and it looks very fresh. Xiao Yuehong frowned. There is no absorption grass. No, master, there is not a single grass on the ground. It was all taken by Xiao Hua. Oh, that's right, Xiao Hua hasn't learned how to pick spiritual grass. Xiao Yuehong nodded slightly. Father, Xiao Hua, there should be no doubt. Xiao Xinrui laughed. If there is something wrong with him, why would he give such a good absorption fruit to us for no reason? Moreover, he gave out more than 10 of them at once. If these things were put on the market, they would be extremely popular goods. Father has no intention of suspecting Xiao Hua. Xiao Yuehong smiled bitterly. It's just, most of the 30-year-old absorption fruits are protected by spiritual beasts. Wasn't Father injured by a spiritual beast this time? And Xiao Hua actually took out so many absorption fruits at once and the quality is so good, I feel that there is something fishy. Master, it doesn't matter if it's strange or not. Even if there's something fishy going on, Xiao Hua is our Shang Huaming's disciple. He can bring me Shang Huaming, so why do you care so much about him? Gong Mingwei also laughed. I think that the more spiritual grass he finds, the better. Even if he finds a 300-year-old exquisite grass, Won't the one who benefits in the end still be me, Shang Huaming? Okay, let's not talk about it anymore. Xiao Yuehong also felt that it was reasonable. He waved his hand and said, You guard the array. Master will prepare to refine pills. When Xiaohua comes back with the black tusk grass, Master will start refining pills. Xiaohua's dozen absorption fruits should be enough to refine dozens of Peiyuan pill. A few of them even smiled and nodded at Xiaohua. It seems, it's not as fierce and frightening as the sect head and senior sister said. Xiaohua unconsciously relaxed a little. After a few hours the sky gradually darkened, and they had already reached the end of the plain. Not far away there was a dense forest that stretched as far as the eye could see. Xiaohua was just about to find a place to stop and look at the direction when suddenly his heart stirred. He turned his head and saw a figure rapidly approaching from 100 zhang behind him. From the looks of it, that figure was rushing towards him. That brat you? The person in the distance seemed to have seen Xiaohua turn his head and shouted from afar. Although the distance was about 100 zhang, that person's voice seemed to be right next to his ear. Xiaohua slightly frowned. That person's flying speed wasn't faster than his own when he was flying at full speed. His cultivation should be around the 9th layer of the qi refining realm. Xiaohua might be able to fly faster than him, but the forest was right in front of him. Xiaohua still hadn't thought of a way to enter it. If he hastily fled, he was afraid there would be danger inside. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua stopped and turned around to respectfully wait. When that person came closer, Xiaohua could already clearly see that he was a middle-aged man about 40 years old. He wore a somewhat shabby Taoist robe and held a long sword in his hand. This senior martial brother, do you have any instructions? Xiaohua bowed and asked. Senior martial brother? That person flew to Xiaohua's side and looked him up and down. He sneered and said, You're just a mediocre cultivator. What qualifications do you have to call me senior martial brother? Xiaohua slapped his forehead with an ashamed expression and said with a smile, It's all this disciple's negligence. This is the first time disciple has come out to do something. Chapter 1245. Seeing Xiaohua call him senior, that person's expression relaxed a little. He nodded slightly and said, It's good that you know. You're just a first-layer aura refining brat. You have to call everyone senior when you see them, not just I. Many thanks for senior's teachings. Disciple understands. Xiaohua bowed again and said with a smile, Hey, which sector you from? Where are you going? That person's question was really rude, but Xiaohua was helpless. He could only say according to the words he'd thought of before. Disciple is Shang Huaming, an apprentice disciple who hasn't been accepted into the sect yet. This time, I'm going to Medicine Gnome Peak on the orders of the sect master to seek an audience with 100 Herbs Gate's Gate Master Jiang. As for why, I ask senior to forgive me. I can't reveal it. Shang Huaming, 100 Herbs Gate. Hearing this, that person's eyes showed disdain and he snorted, What else can it be? I'm just going to ask for a medicinal pill. Senior, how do you know? Xiaohua was shocked. What can I know? That person curled his lips. You're just an insignificant apprentice disciple, yet you were sent out. It can be seen that Shang Huaming's disciples can't come out easily. If they're not injured, then your Shang Huaming underworld sect is in trouble. And going to 100 Herbs Gate. Besides asking for the cleansing pill, what else can you ask for? Cleansing pill? Xiaohua muttered in his heart, but he immediately put on a worshipful expression. Senior is really brilliant. Even the name of the medicinal pill isn't wrong. What's wrong with that? A sect like 100 Herbs Gate is only famous for the cleansing pill. If you're asking for some Peiyuan pill or marrow cleansing pill, you should go to 10,000 Flowers Valley. Besides, going to 10,000 Flowers Valley, I'm afraid you can't do it. That person sneered. 10,000 Flowers Valley? Marrow cleansing pill? Hearing this, Xiaohua's interest was greatly aroused. He bowed again and said, Senior is really amazing. You're really right. You must be a famous cultivator on our Dawn Rain continent. What's your name? Haha, I am. That person was about to say something, but the words stopped at the tip of his tongue. He narrowed his eyes and flew forward half a foot. He smiled and said, "We've just met by chance, so why ask for my name?" "Oh, since Senior is unwilling to bestow a name, then Junior asks for Senior's forgiveness. The medicine farmer peak is still far from here. I'm afraid Junior will have to travel through the night." Xiaohua's heart trembled. His body also flew back by a foot and he hurriedly said, "He sure, but leave the thing in your arms behind." The man finally revealed his ferocious expression. "Something in my bosom?" Xiaohua was stunned and said anxiously, "Senior has misunderstood. Junior doesn't have anything in his bosom. There are only a few flight talismans. If Senior takes these flight talismans, I'm afraid I won't be able to fly to Medicine Farmer Peak." "Who are you trying to fool?" That person patted his waist and took out a yellow talisman from his storage bag. He sneered. "You went to 100 Herbs Gate to ask for the cleansing pill, didn't you give them spirit stones and spirit herbs? You don't have a storage bag, where else can you put it if not in your bosom?" AI, Sect Master and Senior Martial Sister are still too optimistic. They probably didn't expect. "Oh no, it's still my fault. I can't say the reason why I asked for the medicine." Xiaohua's face was full of regret. "Senior, I really don't have anything in my bosom." Xiaohua hurriedly flew back a bit, took out several flying talismans from his bosom, and opened up his clothes to let that person take a look. He said, "Junior only knows that Sect Head has already used a summoning talisman to tell Sect Head Jiang that Junior doesn't need to bring anything." That person stared blankly. Thinking about it, it made sense. However, he still asked, "Then, do you dare to let me search your body?" Xiaohua thought for a moment, raised his hand and said with a bitter smile, "If Senior doesn't believe me, then come and search me." Although he said that, Xiaohua's heart was still nervous. That person's cultivation was at the 9th layer of qi refining. In front of him he didn't have any power to fight back. If he was a bit further away he could still escape. If he was approached, wouldn't he be at the mercy of others? In his heart he still didn't want that person to search his body. "Oh, so it's like that." Seeing that Xiaohua agreed, that person didn't haggle. He waved his hand and said, "Since it's like that, then forget it. How can I lower myself to the level of a junior like you?" When Xiaohua heard this, his face relaxed. Just as he was about to speak, he saw the yellow talisman in that person's hand shoot out like lightning, hitting the defenseless Xiaohua. Suddenly, a huge force bound Xiaohua, making him unable to move. I was almost fooled by you." That person sneered. "You want to deceive I with this little trick. You." Xiaohua could still speak, but he stared at that person with extreme anger. He really didn't expect that this 9th layer qi refining expert would use such a despicable method to deal with him. "Let this poor Taoist take a look," that person said as he flew closer. Xiaohua was very anxious. He used all the strength in his body to struggle free from that huge force. "Fellow Taoist Chong, what are you doing?" A gentle voice came from afar. "Who?" That person was stunned. He retreated half a zhang, then turned around to look. Xiaohua was even more stunned than this fellow Taoist Chong. However, he wasn't surprised that someone came, but rather, when fellow Taoist Chong approached him, he used all his strength to try to break free from that huge binding force. That huge force actually felt like it was about to fall apart when he used 50% of his strength. What's going on? Can my strength break this yellow talisman? This sudden feeling caused Xiaohua to be greatly shocked. He had never thought that his strength could be used in such a way. But immediately after, a shout came from afar, causing Xiaohua to immediately withdraw his strength. This was because when he looked up, he saw a young Taoist around 24 or 25 years old wearing a navy blue Taoist robe flying over. That person's flying speed was much faster than his own. Even if he broke free from the yellow talisman's binding, he still wouldn't be able to fly past this person. It was better to just wait and see. "Oh, so it's fellow Taoist Li." Fellow Taoist Chang's face reddened and he appeared slightly embarrassed. He flew forward and cupped his hands with a smile. Fellow Taoist Li's flying speed was very fast. In a moment he had already arrived in front of him. He glanced at the nearby Xiaohua. Xiaohua seemed to feel something pass over his body. Is this divine sense? Xiaohua's heart trembled. He had heard Su Anpei say that only cultivators at the 12th level of qi refining could produce divine sense. And divine sense was also the basic condition for entering foundation establishment. This fellow Taoist Li is actually at the peak of the late stage of qi refining. No wonder that fellow Taoist Chong is so respectful. Xiao Hua sneered in his heart. But I don't know what this senior Su sees in me. Fellow Taoist Chong, are you playing with a child? Fellow Taoist Li used his divine sense to sweep over Xiao Hua, then no longer paid him any attention. He turned his head and asked with a smile. Fellow Taoist Li, you're right. I was just passing by and really felt bored. When I saw this kid I was just joking with him. Fellow Taoist Chong said resentfully, however I just remembered. The medicinal pills in the Immortal's Cave are going to be refined today. Even if fellow Taoist Li didn't come, I wouldn't have the time to take care of this little guy. Yes, fellow Taoist Chong should go back early. This child only has a few flying talismans on him and doesn't even have a single medicinal pill. If fellow Taoist Chong tarries here, I'm afraid the medicinal pills in the Immortal's Cave will be destroyed. The gains don't make up for the losses. Fellow Taoist Li said unhurriedly. Exactly, I'll hurry back right away. Fellow Taoist Chong bowed and formed hand seals. His figure rapidly flew in another direction, unexpectedly not even sparing a glance at Xiao Hua. Once fellow Taoist Chong flew far away, fellow Taoist Li flew to Xiao Hua's side. Looking at the confinement talismans on his body he sneered and said, "Humph, you've already used the confinement talisman, still joking around." Soon after he swept a glance at Xiao Hua and said coldly, "What sector you from? You're only at the first level of qi refining, yet you actually dare to use a flying talisman to move around? You don't want to live anymore." Xiao Hua knew that this person was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. With a smile on his face he respectfully said, "This one is." Soon after he repeated what he said to fellow Taoist Chong. Yes, these words. In the future, don't say them again, especially where you're going and what you're doing. If you ask for medicine like this, anyone would think that you have precious spiritual herbs in your bosom. If I hadn't used my divine sense to scan your bosom and found out that you had nothing in your bosom, perhaps I would have also made a move. Fellow Taoist Li shouted with a cold face. Afterwards, fellow Taoist Li patted his waist and took out a yellow talisman. However, just as he was about to activate it with his magic power, he stopped and put away the yellow talisman again. He said to Xiao Hua, "It's not easy to break this confinement talisman, and I'll have to waste one of my yellow talismans. In any case, the confinement time is only 4 hours. Although I'm not going in the direction of Medicinal Plant Peak, I can still take you along. After 4 hours, the confinement talisman will be broken and you can go by yourself." After saying that, he didn't wait for Xiao Hua's reply and tossed out his hand. It was a magic tool that looked like a door plank. That magic tool grew as soon as the wind blew and was more than 1 zhang tall. Fellow Taoist Li stepped on top of it and waved his hand. Xiao Hua felt a strong force wrap around him and pulled him onto the magic tool. Afterwards, that magic tool soared into the sky and flew towards the deep forest ahead. Xiao Hua stood on top of the magic tool that looked like a door plank and respectfully said, "Many thanks to Senior for saving me this time. This junior will never forget it. Senior, please bestow me a name. In the future, if there are any fated chances, this junior will definitely repay you." Li Daoyu gave him a cold glance, then snorted coldly from his nose and ignored him. Seeing that the other party disdained to speak to him, Xiao Hua was also helpless and could only stand to the side silently. Although fellow Taoist Li's door plank couldn't compare to Xiao Yuehong's flying boat, it still had a faint light cover covering Xiao Hua inside. Flying in the night sky, there was no biting cold wind. The two of them didn't say anything. The night sky gradually darkened and the mountain forest below their feet, which looked like night beasts, was also silent. Strange. Although there aren't any Foundation establishment demonic beasts in this Royal Imitation Mountain range, there are still plenty of ordinary wild beasts. Today, why are they all sleeping early? Fellow Taoist Li seemed to frequently pass through this Royal Imitation Mountain range and casually said this. After hearing fellow Taoist Li's words, Xiao Hua also felt that it was a bit strange. Although Cherishing Flower Peak was within Shang Huaming's Great Formation, there were still the sounds of insects and birds at night. It was much more lively than here. Chapter 1246. Huh. Just as Xiaohua was looking under the door, a weak green light shot out from the forest far away, heading straight to the west. Under the night sky, the green light was very conspicuous. Li Daoyu couldn't help but stare blankly at it. I have something to do at the last minute. I'm afraid I can't follow you for 4 hours. Li Daoyu pressed on the door panel and lowered it slightly. With a wave of his hand, Xiaohua's body lightly landed on a high slope in the forest. There's still less than an hour before the confinement talisman loses its effect. This place is quite peaceful, so there shouldn't be any danger. You're on your own now. After Li Daoyu finished speaking, he didn't wait for Xiaohua to speak. He pushed the door and chased after the green light. Senior, Xiaohua shouted. Li Daoyu's figure had long disappeared, so how could he hear him? Senior, you're really something. Xiaohua shook his head slightly. You're obviously warm-hearted, but you're also extremely cold to people. Could it be you don't care about my gratitude? Come to think of it, he was only a disciple of the first layer of the aura refining realm, while this man was a senior of the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. Perhaps when the time came, he would be able to step into the foundation establishment realm and become a grandmaster. How could he possibly care about his verbal gratitude? Forget it. If there's a chance in the future, I'll repay him. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and looked around. It was already late at night. Xiaohua was in an open space in the forest. This open space was quite high, so it should be a high hill. There was also quite a bit of distance between him and the surrounding trees. Li Daoyu was right. He estimated that there shouldn't be any danger for less than an hour. However, Xiaohua looked left and right, then took a deep breath. He raised his arm slightly and pressed it against the confinement talisman. Then, using 50% of his strength, the light that was confining Xiaohua shook slightly under Xiaohua's great strength, as if it was about to collapse. Xiaohua used another 10% of his strength, and the talisman in the light moved slightly. Soon after, it lost its original order. With a pot sound, a weak light flashed and was annihilated. The confinement talisman was actually broken by 60% of Xiaohua's strength. Xiaohua was overjoyed. He almost did a few somersaults in the air. He never thought that he could actually break a confinement talisman with the strength he normally used to do chores. Since I can break this confinement talisman, then what about other confinement talismans? Xiaohua's eyes suddenly, he thought of another possibility. However, although he thought a lot, it was all just a hypothesis. He didn't have any chance to put it into practice. Seeing that it was still early, Xiaohua sat down cross-legged. He silently circulated Death Huaming's cultivation method and closed his eyes to cultivate. The moment Xiaohua closed his eyes, the cube-shaped light source in his mind space also stopped rotating. A kind of strange fluctuation swelled up. The night sky's boundless strange starlight was projected onto his body through the void. The night passed in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, bursts of birdsong could be heard. Xiaohua opened his eyes. His mouth and nose were filled with the earthy fragrance of the deep forest early in the morning. Before his eyes, there were also traces of light fog covering the nearby deep forest. It seemed to have a kind of mysterious aura. Xiaohua stood up and stretched his waist. Just as he was about to fly, he suddenly discovered that he seemed to be lost. Last night, fellow Taoist Li casually threw him down and didn't point him in a direction. If Xiaohua kept flying forward, he could find Medicinal Farmer Peak. But now that he stopped, where would he go to look? It seems that I still have to find someone to ask. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. But this was the deep forest, a place that Xiaohua was afraid of. How could he find someone to ask? Thinking this, Xiaohua took out a flight talisman. Just as he was about to cast a spell, he suddenly felt alarmed. Just as he was about to raise his eyes and look in a certain direction, he saw a light cyan brilliance quickly streaking across not far from his eyes. Within that brilliance was a girl in her 20s. She was making hand seals and hurriedly flying through the air. Seeing the girl's anxious expression and looking back from time to time, it seemed that someone was closely chasing after her. And when the girl turned her head, she saw Xiaohua standing on a high hill. She immediately revealed a happy expression. She made hand seals and changed her direction, flying straight towards Xiaohua. Seeing someone appear, she was also happy. She could at least ask for directions. However, when he saw the girl's panicked expression and when she saw him, her face revealed even more joy than his own. Xiaohua had long complained in his heart. Wasn't this gaze the same as his last night? In this kind of situation, how could he not know what he had encountered? If he had the capital to be chivalrous, he would naturally be happy to help others. However, he was only a first-layer qi refining cultivator. He hadn't even crossed the threshold. How could he have the power to protect himself? How could he help others? Besides, Xiaohua had just been schemed against by that fellow Taoist Chong yesterday and almost fell into his evil hands. He had already experienced the ruthlessness of the cultivation world. If he made the slightest mistake, he would become a ghost under the hands of others. Seeing that girl lead the disaster to him, how could he not be nervous? That girl's speed was very fast. Just as Xiaohua revealed a nervous expression and retreated half a step, she had already arrived within 10 feet of him. At this time, Xiaohua also clearly saw the appearance of the person who came. He saw that this girl looked very ordinary. She had big eyes, thin eyebrows, and her skin was slightly dark. She looked just like a village girl. When the girl saw Xiaohua's expression, she was also slightly taken aback. Looking carefully, she saw that Xiaohua's cultivation was only at the first layer of the qi refining realm. Her expression greatly changed. Just as she was about to turn around, she heard several arrogant voices behind her. Over here. This girl actually has a helper. Be careful. Oh, that's not right. What are you afraid of? It's just a brat who just started qi refining. This brat who came to help might also have something good in his hands. Following the shouts, several rays of brilliance of various colors came from the distance. 4 cultivators in different attire also followed behind. They formed an encirclement and rushed that girl towards Xiaohua. It was already too late for that girl to change direction again. Unless she flew over Xiaohua's head, she could only go around from the side. Seeing that her forehead was dripping with sweat and her complexion was pale, it was obvious that her magic power was already exhausted. After thinking for a moment, the girl slightly flew to the side and landed. She patted her waist and a small sword-shaped yellow talisman appeared in her hand. Her face was tense as she coldly looked at the direction of the people who came. You guys actually aren't together? Seeing that the girl wasn't together with Xiaohua, a 30-something-year-old male cultivator in the lead couldn't help but be startled. He looked at the 3 people who also stopped not far away and said, "That's right, this person. But he has nothing to do with me. We only met by chance." The girl turned her head and saw that Xiaohua was still foolishly standing there and watching. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. She glared at him, seemingly hinting that he should hurry and escape. Then she turned her head and said, "Besides, isn't he just a brat in the first layer of qi refining? How can he be my helper?" Seeing that the girl was glaring at him, Xiaohua couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. How could he not want to fly away as soon as possible? Just as the 4 people surrounded that girl and rushed towards him, he had already taken out his flying talisman. However, just as he was about to use his magic power to activate it, he sensed something in his heart. He felt that behind him, the only place he could escape to, there was also a dangerous aura approaching. Although he couldn't say where this feeling came from, he still chose to believe it. Moreover, based on their flying speed, he could already see that these people were all around the 5th layer of qi refining. Although their magic power was stronger than his, their flying speed shouldn't be able to catch up to him. He only had to wait for the person behind him to reveal himself and make these people lose their vigilance towards him. Then he could find a chance to fly away from them. As for the girl who came out, alas, she was a senior in the 5th layer of qi refining. She was far from being comparable to Xiaohua. That's strange. Didn't you run all the way here to find a helper? Since you saw him, why didn't you go up and ask for help? Seeing that the girl had no way out, the middle-aged man had some confidence and said with a smile. The girl took a deep breath, seemingly wanting to seize the time to regulate her breathing. She said with a smile, "If it was someone with a high cultivation level, I would naturally ask for help. But, this kind of cultivation level, I don't want to drag people down with me." Good. Not far from the middle-aged cultivator, another cultivator with a ruddy complexion and wearing Taoist robes clapped his hands and said, "Such elegant conduct, I haven't asked for your name." Presumably you're also a descendant of a famous sect, right? Hee, how could I be a descendant of a famous sect? If I were, would I still be chased by you guys? The girl replied with a sneer. At this moment the other two people weren't young either. Taking advantage of the time when the three people were talking, they flew for a while and surrounded Xiao Hua and the girl. You brat, why didn't you leave? While the girl was talking to the two cultivators, she was also paying attention to the others. At this moment her magic power hadn't recovered yet, so she couldn't fly away in time. However, when she saw that Xiao Hua didn't fly away despite being surrounded by the other two cultivators, she couldn't help but feel anxious and couldn't help but ask. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. He wanted to leave, but how could he leave? The corner of his mouth quietly curled up. Obviously, the girl didn't understand Xiao Hua's meaning. Seeing Xiao Hua's bitter smile, she knew that Xiao Hua had difficulties in his heart. She could only say apologetically, "Don't blame this little girl for bringing disaster here." When this little girl saw that there was actually someone in the wilderness, she thought it was some kind of expert. Alas, forget it. As she spoke, she turned her head and said to the middle-aged cultivator, "Brother Tai, miss, there's no need to say anything. If this person was an ordinary person, we naturally wouldn't pay attention to him. However, although his cultivation level is low, he's still a cultivator after all. If you want us to spare his life, it'd be better to first consider handing over the thing you obtained last night." Hearing that the middle-aged cultivator didn't say to first let Xiao Hua go and instead mention the thing from last night, the girl knew that the situation was bad. Thinking that the other party had the intention to kill Xiao Hua, she coldly said, "This girl can't even protect herself, how could I have the time to care about other people? It's just that because I rashly pulled him into this, I feel guilty in my heart." Chapter 1248. In addition, I only found that thing half a step ahead of you, and there were already people chasing after that thing before me. I really didn't get any benefits. I've already explained it clearly, why don't you believe me? The girl said angrily. "Miss, your words really can't be trusted." The cultivator dressed like a Taoist smiled and said, "This is the Feimeng mountain range. There are no demon beasts or spiritual herbs here. Who would come here? We just didn't have time to go elsewhere. Plus we just walked around on a whim and found it. How could there be other people as bored as us? It's because your cultivation isn't high enough that you don't dare to go elsewhere." The girl sneered. "You only know how to bully a weak girl like me in the wilderness." Miss, you're right. Isn't the law of the jungle the golden rule of the cultivation world? If you're afraid of this, hurry up and hand over the thing. We're in a good mood and let you go. Go home with that pretty boy behind you and give birth to a fat boy. Let him come back to the cultivation world. The four people all laughed. "Give me your life." The girl was so angry that her face turned red. She threw the small sword-shaped yellow paper in her hand into the air. A faint brilliance flashed and the yellow paper turned into a flying sword. With a whoosh, it pierced toward the middle-aged cultivator in front of her like lightning. The middle-aged cultivator had already landed on the ground. When he saw the yellow paper talisman in the girl's hand, he had already taken out his own yellow paper talisman. Seeing the flying sword piercing toward him, he wasn't nervous. He threw the yellow paper talisman in his hand and it burned on its own. A yellow brilliance flashed and a light shield like a golden bell covered him. "Golden bell talisman?" The girl sighed. She formed a seal with her hand and pointed at another person. The Taoist was even more arrogant. He threw a yellow talisman at the wind and it stuck to his body. In an instant the Taoist's body seemed to swell up. He opened his mouth and took a deep breath. He raised his fist and smashed it at the sword light. "Powerful Vajra talisman?" The girl smiled bitterly in her heart. She pointed with her hand, and the flying sword suddenly expanded by 30%. Then it went straight for the Taoist priest's fist. With a loud bang, the Taoist priest's fist collided with the small sword. With a burst of brilliant light, the small sword was sent flying. Then it slowly shrank and turned back into a piece of yellow paper. With a light pop, the yellow paper was burned and turned into ashes in an instant. The Taoist gritted his teeth and his body gradually shrank back to its original size. His face was also a little red. Seeing that the flying sword was ineffective, the girl's expression changed slightly. She patted a small storage pouch on her waist and took out a few yellow talismans. She looked like she was in pain. She picked one out and muttered something. Then she pointed her finger and a large fireball appeared out of thin air and flew toward the girl. Immediately after, another flying sword talisman appeared in his hand and flew towards the middle-aged cultivator closest to him. The middle-aged cultivator sneered. His golden bell talisman hadn't lost its effect yet, so the flying sword couldn't do anything. The girl seemed to only want to attract the middle-aged cultivator's attention. After the flying sword talisman was sent out, she used her magic power to ignite another yellow talisman. Then she flew up and charged toward the Taoist priest along with the fireball. The Taoist priest still hadn't calmed down. When he saw the fireball flying over, he couldn't help but feel anxious. He patted his storage pouch and took out a yellow talisman. He waved it in the wind and a mist of water spread out toward the fireball. With a pop, water vapor rose and the fireball and the mist of water both disappeared. At the same time, the small sword pierced the middle-aged cultivator's light barrier and messed it up. But something strange happened. Just as the middle-aged cultivator's light barrier dissipated, a pale yellow brilliance suddenly rose from behind the flying sword and enveloped the middle-aged cultivator's body. The middle-aged cultivator was anxious. Without thinking, he immediately patted his waist. A brilliance flashed and a similar golden bell talisman covered his body. At the same time, the brilliance behind the flying sword also attacked. Strangely, that brilliance was exactly the same as the middle-aged cultivator's golden bell talisman. It actually hit the outside of the middle-aged cultivator's golden bell. Just as the middle-aged cultivator was bewildered, he saw the girl's face flash with a proud smile. She turned around and flew in front of the middle-aged cultivator. When the middle-aged cultivator wanted to use his flying talisman to chase after her, he found that he couldn't move at all. The Taoist priest had just taken out his flying talisman and didn't have time to fly. As for the other two, they were behind the girl and Xiaohua was between them. They simply couldn't catch up. Everyone present was dumbstruck. Xiaohua was even more flabbergasted. This was the first time he saw this kind of yellow talisman being used in such a strange way. And the girl's method was also wonderful. He actually shook all four of them. There was no need to mention Xiaohua. The middle-aged cultivator struggled several times but didn't succeed. He could only look on helplessly as the girl flew past him. She flew further and further away and the Taoist priest flew after her. Seeing that he couldn't catch up, he stopped and walked in front of the middle-aged cultivator, wanting to help him out. Xiaohua saw the girl fly away in the direction he felt the dangerous aura from. His face unconsciously became gloomy and uncertain. He didn't use the flying talisman in his hand, hesitating whether or not he should take advantage of this opportunity to escape. The two people in front of him slightly hesitated. One flew up and the other walked to Xiaohua's side. Just as Xiaohua clenched his teeth and prepared to risk his life to fly away, a figure appeared in the air. It was the girl who had just escaped. With a bit of fear on her face, she flew back. "Ha!" The middle-aged cultivator laughed heartily. "Girl, you have good methods. If we didn't have a backup plan, wouldn't you have escaped?" Sure enough, behind that girl there were two people who formed a triangle and forced her back. At this time, the girl seemed to somewhat understand why Xiaohua had curled his lips at her back just now. These two cultivators were still middle-aged, but they were different from the previous four. These two people were dressed in secular clothing and looked almost the same. Even the vulgar and greedy light in their eyes were the same. They forced the girl back to her original position, even to Xiaohua's side. The two people chuckled coldly at the same time. "See? You guys still let her escape in the end. If it weren't for us two brothers, you guys would have been like drawing water with a bamboo basket. How about it? Do we still have to discuss how to split the profits?" When the middle-aged cultivator finished laughing, his face showed disdain. However, it seemed that the six people had already discussed beforehand, so he had no choice but to agree. Seeing that everyone didn't agree, the two people rubbed their hands at the same time. They looked at the girl's face and said, "Girl, looking at your appearance, I'm afraid you're not a virgin, right? I don't know if you've heard of us brothers?" The girl was disdainful at first, but then she thought of something. The expression on her face changed rapidly, and even her body trembled slightly. Her eyes hurriedly searched left and right for an opportunity to escape. Ah, don't look for it. Hurry up and hand over the thing from last night and then, Tiskadie, join us brothers in studying the joyful Zen. The girl gnashed her teeth. Pailon and Shuang, you guys actually ran here? Hee girl, what's so strange about this? We brothers are only here to gain experience. Why can't we come? Said one arrogantly. Why are you wasting your breath on her? Said the other impatiently. Kill first and then rape, we don't have to worry about not finding that thing. As soon as this person said this, his eyes revealed a dazed look. The person beside him became even more interested. His left hand snapped his fingers and laughed. If you don't behave, there's no harm in killing first and then raping later. The girl's whole body shivered. She clenched her teeth and a trace of desperation appeared in her eyes. At this moment she was quite close to Xiaohua, almost as close as him. Admittedly, she didn't look at Xiaohua, seemingly not wanting to implicate him. However, Xiaohua saw the person behind him and knew that he couldn't escape either. He couldn't help but pay attention. Hearing Pai Lon and Shuang Xiong's obscenities, he was already angry. Seeing the despair in the girl's eyes, he very naturally thought of his own situation. Putting himself in her shoes, how could Xiaohua not understand that the girl's heart was like dead ashes and that if this matter really happened she would rather die than live? A trace of murderous intent arose unconsciously. It's just that the other side had 6 people, all of them in the 5th layer of qi refining, and Xiaohua himself was only in the 1st layer of qi refining. What could he use to kill people? Even if Xiao Yuehong gave him a stack of yellow talismans in his space, they would definitely be used for defense and escape. How could he use them to kill people? Seeing that the girl's beautiful face turned pale, Pai Lon and Shuang Xiong were very excited. They rubbed their hands and walked forward. That girl was naturally afraid and also naturally moved closer to Xiaohua. She had long forgotten that the cultivation of the young man beside her was shallow. She only had a kind of grasping at straws to rely on him. What could Xiaohua do? He couldn't escape, so he could only sigh. He stepped forward and cupped his hands. 2 heroes. This junior has something to say, but I don't know if I should say it or not. One of the Pai Lon and Shuang Xiong beamed. Since you know you shouldn't say it, then there's no need to say it. This junior is not acquainted with all of you and has nothing to do with your grievances. But this junior thinks that since it's just for the item, why don't we let this young lady take out the item? You can take it and release this young lady, and that's it. The heavens have the virtue of cherishing life. To be able to leave a person's life and accumulate a bit of virtue, that's also good. Pai Lon and Shuang Xiong's faces revealed an inconceivable expression, as if they didn't understand. The two of them slowly approached in a pincer formation as if they didn't let down their guard. Their mouths, however, sneered. Little guy, with this kind of cultivation you can actually say such words. It seems like your courage isn't small. How did your master teach you? Just in the 1st layer of qi refining, you want to come out to gain experience? Since you want to come out to gain experience, you still haven't heard of my brother's reputation. If you know of my reputation, you'll naturally know why my brother won't let this girl go. Chapter 1249. Kaka, little brother, take a look. Did fellow Taoist Lu and the others say anything? Of course, Xiaohua raised his eyes and swept his gaze over. Although the several people from before had surrounded the two of them, they were all far away from the twin blue bears. Their faces also carried a trace of contempt, as if they disdained to be associated with them. The face of the girl at the side was pale and she said softly, "This? Fellow Taoist, I'm really sorry for dragging you into this. This is a fireball talisman. I'll have to trouble you. If something happens to me, please hit me. I'll be eternally grateful." As she spoke, she handed over a yellow talisman brimming with vital energy fluctuations. Xiaohua frowned slightly and reached out to receive it. The girl's eyes were filled with gratitude as she said, "Fellow Taoists, yeah, these twin blue bears have always been lecherous, taking pleasure in torturing corpses. Fellow Taoist, no need to say anything more." As she spoke, she patted her waist and took out several yellow talismans. She gave a few to Xiaohua and said, "Fellow Taoist, these are several yellow talismans. Please accept them. You and I are now fighting side by side. At that time we shared a common hatred. I don't know how many yellow talismans fellow Taoist has, so I'll use them first." Looking at the yellow talismans in his hand, Xiaohua almost wanted to laugh bitterly. His magic power was at the first level of the aura refining realm. He didn't know if he could activate these yellow talismans. But thinking about it, this girl was at the 5th level of the aura refining realm. He probably knew he could use them. So he nodded slightly. His right hand took a yellow talisman and held it in front of his chest. His left hand took out several others and placed them to the side. Seeing the two people take out yellow talismans, the twin blue bears didn't hesitate. They patted their hands and similarly took out 2 yellow talismans. With a wave of their hands, the yellow talismans transformed into an earthen yellow brilliance that enveloped the two people. These yellow talismans were different from the golden bell talisman from before. They didn't form a light barrier. Instead, they stuck to the two people's bodies and disappeared without a trace. "Iron cloak talisman," the girl muttered. "This high-grade yellow talisman must have been bought by this guy at a high price." "High-grade yellow talisman?" Hearing the girl's words, Xiaohua couldn't help but stare blankly. He inwardly said, "This thing probably spent a lot of spirit stones on the market?" However, at this moment the twin blue bears were already within 3 meters. "Man, you look at my yellow talisman." Xiaohua snorted and sent the meager amount of magic power in his body into the yellow talisman. With a flick of his hand, the talisman immediately exploded and a large fireball appeared with a bang. The surrounding world's origin energy swarmed over. Looking at the fireball, it was at least 3 to 4 times smaller than the one that the girl had released. Following Xiaohua's gesture, the fireball flew towards the twin bears. "Ha!" Pylon and the twin bears laughed so hard that they almost bent over. Even the people around them covered their mouths. Indeed, how big would you expect a first-layer chi refining disciple to shoot out a fireball? But just as everyone was laughing at him, Xiaohua slapped his left hand, and a flying talisman appeared on his body. With a burst of magic power, his figure followed the fireball and charged towards one of the 2 pylon bears. "Oh my god, someone who doesn't know the difference between life and death actually came knocking on my door?" The twin blue bears leaned forward as if they didn't care. They had iron cloak talismans on their bodies, which absolutely couldn't be broken by a low-level chi refining disciple. However, Xiaohua's flying speed was very fast. The twin blue bears didn't feel anything when facing Xiaohua, but the 4 people next to him were flabbergasted. "Ah? How can he be so fast?" Even the girl behind Xiaohua was flabbergasted. This speed was far from what she could match. Everyone was astonished. The twin blue bears were even more caught unprepared. When Xiaohua approached them, even though the twin blue bears' eyes were somewhat flustered, they were still full of ridicule. Xiaohua also didn't neglect them. As soon as he arrived in front of one of the twin blue bears, he immediately raised his hand and grabbed the arm of one of the twin blue bears. That person stared blankly and his face became even more disdainful. Not to mention the iron cloak talismans on his body and the true chi protecting his body, he wasn't afraid of the martial arts on his hands and feet. One of the reasons why the twin blue bears were called bears was because these 2 people had cultivated body refining techniques and martial arts with their fists and feet. One of the twin blue bears waved his hand, wanting to block Xiaohua's hand, but Xiaohua's hand moved in an unknown way and unexpectedly dodged his hand. That seemingly very delicate hand still grabbed his arm. In an instant, an incomparably huge force was transmitted from the twin blue bear's arms. "Oh, this is bad." Although that person didn't know what was going to happen next, he already had a vague feeling in his heart that something was wrong. Sure enough, just as he was thinking that something bad was going to happen, a fist suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. Pa pa pa. This fist instantly struck the twin blue bears' faces 3 times in a row. Ah, the twin blue bears who were struck by Xiaohua's fists let out blood-curdling screams. It seemed that the first punch had already caused them to suffer heavy injuries, and the following 2 punches were even more frightening. Xiaohua's fists, without exception, struck the same place on the twin blue bears' faces. It was merely 2 punches, but the twin blue bears' faces actually emitted a burst of chaotic brilliance. Voila! A crisp sound rang out. It was actually the sound of the iron cloak talisman being broken. This crisp sound was extremely weak and also extremely familiar. However, in everyone's ears, it was no different from a sudden clap of thunder in the sky. With merely 2 punches, this youngster actually broke a high-level iron cloak talisman. Was this the cultivation of a first-level chi-refining cultivator? In an instant everyone thought of something else. I'll leave it to you, little girl. Xiao Hua let out a long laugh, then turned around and flew towards the other twin blue bears. His flying speed was even faster. This speed confirmed some people's thoughts. The girl cried out in delight, "Yes, senior." As she spoke, the sword talisman in her hand moved again. A long sword flew towards the twin blue bears whose iron cloak talisman had been broken. Xiao Hua turned around, and without any pretense he casually raised his fist and smashed it towards the other twin blue bears. That person was already terrified. He thought that Xiao Hua was a nascent soul cultivator who had concealed his cultivation level. How could he still dare to fight back? He cried out, "Senior, please spare me." His figure flew up, desperately flying backwards. The instant he flew up, Xiao Hua's fist also arrived. It hit his waist. This time Xiao Hua's strength was even greater. He had used up all his strength. With a crisp walla sound, that iron cloak talisman was broken in one fell swoop. Run! The 4 spectators no longer dared to hesitate. They glanced at each other, then scattered and flew away. As for the twin blue bears that the girl's sword talisman attacked, although their defenses were broken by Xiao Hua, they had already used their flying talismans. When the small sword attacked, they flew into the air. "Where do you think you're going?" Xiao Hua shouted. He turned around and seemed to chase after that person. His fist also flew over. That person's face had already changed color. He didn't dare to stay any longer and fled without looking back. "You want to run? It's not that easy," the girl shouted. She also used her flying talisman. Her figure jumped up and she was just about to chase. How could Xiao Hua let her chase? He hurriedly pulled her hand, looked around, picked a direction and flew away. "Senior." When the girl saw Xiao Hua grab her wrist, her face flushed red. She wanted to break free, but then she calmed down and said in a low voice, "Senior, why didn't you kill the twin blue bears? They are extremely notorious in this area." How could Xiao Hua have the time to explain to her? Just now he also took a risk and tested his strength. Sure enough, he was able to break the twin blue bears' so-called high-grade iron cloak talisman. It gave them the misconception that he was a great expert and could defeat them with just his body. But there were many flaws in this. If he carefully thought about it, how could he not know? Presumably, the 6 of them would wake up as soon as they flew halfway. Xiao Hua's flying speed was very fast. They might not be able to catch up, but this girl was different. Xiao Hua could only take advantage of the fact that the 6 of them were still confused and quickly pull this girl away. The further the better. The girl didn't understand Xiao Hua's actions, but he was a nascent soul senior. He was enough to be her grandmaster. How could she dare to ask more? However, under the pull of the nascent soul stage senior's hand, the young lady felt an enormous force pulling her along. The speed of their flight was indeed much faster than hers. Seeing a smile at the corner of Xiao Hua's mouth, she immediately said, "Senior, perhaps you haven't heard of Liang's Kai clan, but I'm sure you've heard of Qingyuan's Kai clan. Senior, please know that my Liang's Kai clan is a branch of Qingyuan's Kai clan." Soon after she said somewhat awkwardly, "But, because we haven't been in contact for a long time and there hasn't been a foundation establishment cultivator in the clan for a long time. So, clan?" Xiao Hua stared blankly. Chapter 1250. Here. Could it be that you don't believe Junior? Kai Zhuixia couldn't help but smile bitterly. Junior knows that Senior must come from a famous sect and is a famous nascent soul cultivator on the Dawn Rain continent. Of course you look down on cultivator families like us. Not to mention my Liang Kai clan is only a cultivator family, so we can't enter Senior's eyes. But my Qingyuan Kai clan also once had an ancestor who was an elder of the Kunlun sect. Even now, the Kunlun sect often selects disciples from my Kai clan. It's just that my Liang Kai clan hasn't had an outstanding disciple for a long time, so we lost our precious quota. Kai Zhuoxia stopped speaking and stole a glance at Xiaohua's expression. Hearing Kai Zhuoxia say so much in one breath and not letting him speak, Xiaohua more or less understood the meaning of these so-called cultivator families. They should be one level lower than cultivator sects like Shang Huaming and 100 Herbs Gate, but they were much stronger than ordinary families. These families had very deep foundations and their disciples all had very good cultivation aptitudes, so they could cultivate more easily than ordinary people. However, he heard the sect leader say that there were many cultivators on the Dawn Rain continent who could only cultivate to the aura refining stage. Presumably, these cultivator families were like this. Of course, according to Kai Zhuoxia's meaning, this Kai clan also had some Kunlun sect elders, so they had the capital of when one person achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs can ascend to heaven. This was how they obtained the shelter of their elders and made their clan qualified to cultivate. Seeing that Xiaohua's expression didn't change, Kai Zhuoxia was somewhat discouraged. She bit her lip and raised her head to look into the distance again. She muttered, "Junior. The reason why I'm telling Senior all this isn't because I have other intentions. It's just that Senior just saved Junior's life. Junior knows that Senior's cultivation base is profound and you don't care about Junior's repayment. However, Junior still wants to ask for Senior's celestial title. I hope Senior will engrave it in my heart so that in the future if there's a chance, Junior can repay Senior." Towards the end, Kai Zhuoxia's voice had already become much softer. In her cultivation clan, nascent soul cultivators were tantamount to an unattainable existence. Speaking of repayment, how could this be possible? Kai Zhuoxia's original intention was perhaps to get closer to Xiaohua so that she could have some kind of opportunity in the future. Therefore, her heart felt weak and her voice seemed to float away. Seeing that Kai Zhuoxia had finally finished speaking and was giving him a chance to speak, Xiaohua smiled bitterly at first. Then he obediently bowed and said, "Senior, please don't say that. I'm not a senior. I'm only at the first layer of the Qi refining realm, not some nascent soul cultivator like Senior said." "This is impossible." Kai Zhuoxia covered her mouth in surprise. Although she had doubts just now, she had already dispelled them in her heart. Now that she heard it with her own ears, how could she still believe it? "Senior, you should come over. You are seen by the Blue Bear duo again. I'm afraid we won't be able to scare them this time." Xiaohua looked at the mountain rock above his head and said somewhat anxiously. Oh, hearing the name Pylon Twin Bears, Kai Zhuoxia felt a chill run down her spine. In addition, Xiaohua was only a first-layer aura refining disciple who didn't enter the sect. Compared to her own fifth-layer aura refining cultivation, Kai Zhuoxia walked in without hesitation. "Are you really in the first layer of Qi refining? Which sect are you from? With such a low cultivation level, why did the sect send you out alone? Why don't you follow a senior brother with a high cultivation level? Where are you going?" Kai Zhuoxia stood not far from Xiaohua. Her eyes were wide open as she curiously looked at this young man whose cultivation level really couldn't be brought to the table. Xiaohua was somewhat embarrassed. He didn't expect Kai Zhuoxia to say so much to herself just now, and now unexpectedly ask so many questions in one breath. Moreover, he still remembered fellow Taoist Li's words from last night, so he didn't want to answer any of these questions. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua said, "Didn't Senior already see that Junior's cultivation level is indeed at the first layer of Qi refining? It's just that Junior's strength is great. Just now, Junior took advantage of the Blue Bear duo's carelessness and caught them off guard. Otherwise, when this Junior destroyed the Iron Cloak talisman of one of the twin bears of Pylon, I should have directly killed him. But this Junior was afraid of provoking the anger of the other person. If they didn't run and fought with this Junior would definitely be killed. Fortunately, they actually ran away. Junior had no choice but to let them go." Seeing Xiaohua's helpless expression as if he was very unwilling to scare them away, she couldn't help but laugh. "I didn't expect your strength to be so great. You were actually able to destroy a high-grade yellow talisman. I really didn't dare to imagine it." Kai Zhuoxia's face was full of smiles. Moreover, You also flew extremely fast. Speaking up to here, Kai Zhuoxia seemed to have thought of something and her face revealed a pleasant surprise. However, her eyes spun a few times before she said, moreover, you flew extremely fast and looked very young. Not only me but the other 6 people also regarded you as a nascent soul senior. But why? Xiaohua was somewhat baffled. What's so strange about that? Chapter 1251. By the way, fellow Taoist Xiao, did you come out this time to gain experience? Kai Zhuoxia asked again. No. Xiaohua shook his head. I have some matters to attend to. Medicine Farmer Peak. Xiaohua thought that he might have to ask Kai Zhuoxia about the location of Medicinal Farmer Peak in a while, so he revealed some information. Oh, fellow Taoist Xiao wants to go to the 100 Herbs Gate. What a pity. Kai Zhuoxia's tone was a little disappointed, but there was a hint of envy in her eyes. Clearly, this 100 Herbs sect was one of the famous sects in the state of Xi. A pity? Xiaohua was slightly taken aback and asked curiously, why is that? This. Kai Zhuoxia was a little hesitant. Since fellow Taoist Xiao has something to do, I don't think it's convenient for you to talk about it. Let's not talk about this matter anymore. Xiaohua suddenly understood. Just now, Kai Zhuoxia said that she wanted to talk to him about something, but she didn't say anything. Presumably it was this MOT matter. And if it's inconvenient for fellow Kai, there's no need to mention it. Xiaohua said with a smile. Actually, fellow Taoist Xiao would be the most suitable person to handle this matter. It's just that, if you're unlucky you can't do it. Kai Zhuoxia still sighed, feeling very regretful. However, if fellow Taoist Xiao is busy now, I wonder if you have time to make a trip to the 1,000 Feet Peak half a year later? Thousandjiang Peak. Where is it? After Kai Zhuoxia told him the location, Xiaohua pondered for a moment. Hearing Kai Zhuoxia's tone and thinking about the matter of Pai Lon, Shuang Xiong and the others just now, he faintly felt that there was something fishy going on, so he asked, if I can't go down, how about I ask my senior martial brother or senior martial sister to go down? What do you think? Don't. Kai Zhuoxia's expression changed when she heard that. She quickly waved her hand and said, fellow Taoist Xiao. This matter is to repay fellow Taoist for saving my life. If fellow Taoist is too busy to go, then so be it. Please allow me to find an opportunity to repay you in the future. Just forget about your sect's elders and elders. Even if they know, they might not go. Xiaohua nodded and said thoughtfully, fellow Taoist Kai didn't say anything, so how would I know if it's worth going? Don't worry, fellow cultivator. You're my savior. Although I'm from a cultivation family, I know how to repay kindness. Moreover, I do need a helper to go to the 1,000 Feet Peak. You're the best helper. Kai Zhuoxia said sincerely. Xiaohua thought to himself, half a year later the Peiyuan pill would have been refined long ago, and senior martial brother and senior martial sister's cultivation levels would have also improved. Moreover, the linglong grass would have just sprouted not too long ago, so the foundation building pill definitely wouldn't be able to be refined. I don't have anything to do on Xihua Peak, so why don't I go with her to Thousandjiang Peak? Since she has already explained her background, I only need to tell the sect master the whole story half a year later. Even if this Kai Zhuoxia wants to harm me, she still has to consider the safety of her family. Just now, she thought that I was a nascent soul senior, so what she said must be true. Since she said that senior martial brothers won't go, presumably, there won't be too much danger. Thinking up to this point, Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, thank you, fellow Taoist. Since fellow Taoist has the heart, then I'll do my best to go. Hearing this, Kai Zhuoxia was overjoyed. She took out a summoning talisman from her bosom and handed it over, saying, fellow Taoist Xiao, please accept this summoning talisman. If you arrive at the 1,000 Feet Peak half a year later, you can send it out. If fellow Taoist doesn't have time to go, then you can keep it. When you arrive at Liang Town, send it out and I'll do my best as a host. Xiaohua accepted it with a smile and put it away. He cupped his hands and said, fellow Taoist Kai, I'm in a hurry so I won't stay here any longer. I don't know if the Pai and Lon duo can find this place. If they can, then fellow Taoist can stay here for a while. The Pai and Lon duo may discover that something is wrong with fellow Taoist Xiao, but all rogue cultivators are cowards. They may not chase after you. Fellow Taoist, please leave. I'll rest for a while and also leave. Kai Zhuxiao cupped her hands and said, "Good." Xiao Hua nodded. He hesitated for a moment and asked, "I don't know. Does fellow Taoist Kai know the location of Medicine Gnome Peak?" What? Kai Zhuxiao was slightly stunned, but she immediately understood. She covered her mouth and laughed, saying, "The direction that fellow Taoist Xiao is leading is precisely towards Medicine Gnome Peak. When I heard it just now, I thought fellow Taoist Xiao was taking me here in passing." Xiao Hua scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "I'm sorry, I'm indeed lost. From here to Medicine Gnome Peak is only a few hundred miles away. With fellow Taoist Zhao's flying speed, I'm afraid you'll arrive in a few hours? Thank you fellow Taoist Kai, we'll meet again someday." Xiao Hua cupped his hands and saluted. He looked around and saw that there were no abnormalities in the sky. He then turned around and looked at Kai Zhuxiao, who followed him out. He put a flying talisman on his body and his figure flew like an arrow towards Medicine Gnome Peak. Seeing that Xiao Hua's speed was much faster than hers, Kai Zhuxiao quietly stood there until Xiao Hua's figure disappeared. She then sighed. First-level aura refining has this kind of flying speed. Moreover, he's so strong that he can actually break the Iron Cloak talisman. It's a pity that he's so old. I really don't know if this Xiao Hua is a genius or a good-for-nothing. Alas, this kind of strangeness. I'm afraid he's comparable to little sister. Only this kind of strange person, which sect does he belong to? There aren't many famous sects in the country of Xi. If I have time, I'll have to carefully investigate. Kai Zhuxiao stood there for a moment. She also took out a flying talisman from her storage pouch and directly flew in another direction. Xiao Hua flew in the air, unable to conceal the excitement in his heart. Last night, when he broke free from the confinement talisman, he already had a faint feeling in his heart that he should have discovered a divine ability that others didn't have, and that was to break through with force. However, last night he only had a feeling and couldn't confirm it. After all, this kind of divine ability was indeed strange. He'd never heard Xiao Yuehong and the others mention it. And this morning, before he could wake up from his sleep, he was dragged into trouble by Kai Zhuxiao. He was only a first-level aura refining disciple. In the eyes of the sixth-level aura refining experts, he wasn't worth mentioning. Moreover, the rogue cultivators wanted to kill Xiao Hua to silence him. Therefore, in a situation where Xiao Hua didn't have any power to fight back, he had no choice but to take the risk and take out the divine ability he just discovered. Fortunately, Xiao Hua's strength wasn't just for show. He really could break through with force and break the Iron Cloak talisman of the Pylon twin bears. Of course, to kill the Pylon twin bears on the spot, Xiao Hua still didn't have the strength to do so. Because Xiao Hua used his fists to break the Iron Cloak talisman of the Pylon twin bears, relying on being caught off guard, relying on the other party's carelessness. As long as the other party was on guard and pulled apart the distance, although Xiao Hua's flying speed was extremely fast, if they threw one yellow talisman after another, Xiao Hua would definitely be killed before he could get close. This was also the reason why Xiao Hua didn't dare to rashly kill one of the Pylon twin bears, lest it arouse the other party's anger. And most importantly, after Xiao Hua broke the Iron Cloak talisman of the Pylon twin bears, he clearly saw that one of the Pylon twin bears' hands had already taken out the other yellow talisman. Therefore he left this person to Kai Zhuxiao, while he himself attacked the other person, giving others the illusion that he was in control of the overall situation, that he was fighting one against two. Sixth level of the Qi refining realm. Xiao Hua's heartbeat sped up. Those are great experts in the middle stage of the Qi refining realm. I actually scared them away, even if I told second senior martial brother, he wouldn't necessarily believe it. However, using force to break through can only be used as a surprise attack method. Can only be effective when I get close. But normally when fighting its magic power and talismans, how can they let me get close? Therefore, increasing my cultivation is the way of the king. Xiao Hua rolled up his sleeves to show off the muscles on his arms, thinking to himself, Kai Zhuxiao actually regards me as a nascent soul stage senior. My goodness, I also don't know if I'll have the opportunity to advance to the foundation establishment stage in this lifetime, let alone the nascent soul stage. They really think too highly of me. Crap, there's someone in front. Xiao Hua saw some brilliance in front of him from afar as if there were people fighting. He immediately lowered his altitude and hid in a place to watch from afar. In the past he didn't know what individual cultivators were, but now that he received Kai Zhuoxia's guidance he finally understood. If these cultivators who didn't belong to any school or sect wanted to improve their cultivation, if they didn't seek out other people's misfortune or rob other people's things, how could they improve? That fellow Taoist Chong from before was probably an individual cultivator, right? He actually didn't even let off a first-level qi refining disciple like himself. Xiao Hua hid for a moment, but when he saw that the flashing brilliance in front of him didn't weaken in the slightest, he knew the fight was still going on. He thought for a moment, looked left and right and circled around from the side, determined not to get close to them. Just like that, Xiao Hua became cautious. Whenever he sensed any warning signs he would immediately flee. Unexpectedly he spent half the time Kai Zhuoxia estimated before he arrived in front of a mountain range. During these several hours Xiao Hua had seen more than 10 qi refining cultivators. No matter whether their cultivation level was high or low, Xiao Hua felt that these people's faces were engraved with the labels of robbery and silencing. His heart couldn't help but feel uneasy. Even when he arrived in front of this mountain range, 3 second and 3rd level qi refining cultivators flew out from the mountain range and blocked his path. His heart still skipped a beat and he inwardly said, "Crap, how did I end up in front of them? This guy, does he want to take my life?" Just when he was thinking about whether he should hide and circle around from the side, or take advantage of their unpreparedness to break through their defenses and kill them, he heard one of the 3rd level qi refining cultivators coldly shout, "Which sect's disciple is in front of you? Don't you know this is my 100 Herbs Gate's territory?" 100 Herbs Gate. When Xiao Hua heard this he was secretly delighted. When he looked at that cultivator again the bad look on his face had already disappeared, and he appeared very sanctimonious. "Strange," Xiao Hua inwardly exclaimed, "just now I didn't know this person was a 100 Herbs Gate disciple." I felt that he wasn't safe from head to toe, but after hearing that he's a 100 Herbs Gate disciple, why, do I feel that he won't harm me? This definitely isn't right. Even if they aren't individual cultivators and are 100 Herbs Gate disciples, if I lose my vigilance, the one who will suffer in the end will still be me. As he thought this, Xiao Hua stopped and cupped his hands in salute, saying, "This one is Xiao Hua of Xinghua Ming. I've come to seek an audience with sect leader Jiang on the orders of my sect's sect leader. If you like this work you're welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for it." Chapter 1252. Shang Huaming. The disciple was obviously stunned. He sized Xiao Chen up and down in disbelief before putting on a fake smile and saying, "You say that you are Shang Huaming's disciple. Do you have any proof?" Xiao Hua replied in a manner that was neither haughty nor humble. "When I came down, the sect master had already sent a transmission talisman to your sect. Your sect master Jiang has also seen me before, so he didn't give me a token. You are indeed Shang Huaming's fellow Taoist." When the disciple heard this, his expression unconsciously changed. He cupped his hands and returned the greeting. "I am Qin Feng from the 100 Herbs sect. Earlier, the young sect master had warned me that Shang Huaming's fellow Taoist would come. However, the young sect master only said that he would come in 2 days. I didn't expect fellow Taoist Xiao to come so quickly." Then he looked behind him and frowned. "The other senior brothers or sisters of your sect didn't come?" Xiao Hua blanked. He thought that Xiao Yuehong had already sent a transmission talisman and told him about his arrival. Seemed that he was wrong. He could only smile and say, "Only I came from my sect. The other senior brothers haven't come out yet." Qin Feng was somewhat flabbergasted. He opened his mouth but didn't say anything. Presumably he wanted to say, "Your Shang Huaming is really at ease. He actually led a disciple at the 1st level of qi refining out of the sect." "Fellow Taoist Xiao, please wait a moment." As Qin Feng spoke, he took out a yellow talisman from his bosom and sent it with his magic power. The yellow talisman flew out with a whoosh and disappeared without a trace in a few blinks of an eye. Qin Feng smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Shao, the young sect master instructed that as long as Shang Huaming's disciple comes, we should inform him immediately. He will definitely come out to welcome you personally." Shao Hua's face was filled with fear as he hastily said, I don't dare. I am Shang Huaming's disciple who hasn't even entered the sect. How can I deserve to be personally welcomed by your young sect master?" In fact, Qin Feng was also bewildered. He couldn't figure out how a mere first-level qi condensation cultivator could be worthy of a 12th-level qi condensation young master's welcome. However, since Jiang Fan had given such an order, how could he disobey? Sure enough, in just a moment, a burst of drum music sounded from the distant mountain peak. Then a huge red brilliance stretched out from the mountain peak like a rainbow in front of Shao Hua's eyes. At the same time, a rather large round plate flew along with the red brilliance like lightning. Shao Hua's eyes were sharp. He had already seen that on the round plate at the very front was Jiang Fan in black and Jiang Yan in red. Behind them there were disciples from 2 sections. They were holding strange musical instruments in their hands, and they were making beautiful sounds. After a long distance, Jiang Fan released his divine sense and saw that Shao Hua was the only one standing in front of Qin Feng. He was just as surprised as Qin Feng was before. He turned to look at Jiang Yan, who was equally surprised, and asked curiously, "Didn't Shang Huaming sect master Shao say that he would send his disciples over? Why don't I see Shao Xianrui or Gong Mingwei? What are these disciples doing here?" Then he looked behind Shao Hua. There was no one there. Could it be that the disciple mentioned by sect master Shao is this guy? Jiang Yan's face was ashen. She had dressed up to welcome them, thinking that they were from Shao Xianrui. Unexpectedly, it was actually a first-level qi condensation kid. Seeing Jiang Yan's expression change greatly, Jiang Fan knew that something was wrong and immediately warned, "Yan, be careful. Although this kid hasn't entered the sect, he has always been serving behind sect master Shao. He can be considered Shang Huaming's confidant. Father wants to build a good relationship with Shang Huaming. This kid can't be neglected. Don't lose your temper. Big brother, it's fine if you flatter Shao Xianrui. I can't say anything. What kind of people are Shang Huaming? One Gong Mingwei, one Zhang Qingxia. Both of them are only at the 10th level of qi condensation. They are too far away from our 100 Herbs Gates disciples. Father, how could he not know what sect master Shao meant? Why did he ask me to welcome them? Even if it's those 2, I can endure it. But this Shao something, even if he is Shang Huaming's disciple, he is only a first-level qi condensation disciple. How can he be welcomed by 2 late-stage qi condensation cultivators of our 100 Herbs Gate? Jiang Yan pointed at Shao Hua and said angrily, Forget it. It's all Big Brother's fault. I thought if Shang Huaming's disciple was coming, it would definitely be Shao Xianrui. I never thought it would be this guy." Jiang Fan hurriedly said, "Since we're already here, it's not good to go back halfway. Let's stand here for a while first." As they spoke, the 2 people's round plates arrived in front of Shao Hua. When Shao Hua saw the 2 young lords of 100 Herbs Gate coming in person, he was already surprised. He flew forward and bowed in greeting. "This one is Shao Hua of Shang Huaming. Greetings to the 2 young lords. 2 seniors coming in person really makes this one panic." Jiang Yan stood on the round plate and ignored him. Her mouth was tight and her eyelids were lowered as if she didn't hear him. Jiang Fan's face was full of spring breeze. He floated down from the round plate and helped Shao Hua up with a smile. "Junior Marshal Brother Shao, it's only been a few days since Shang Huaming left. I didn't expect Sect Master Shao to send you to our 100 Herbs Gate. It's a pleasure to meet you." Then he pretended to look behind and asked curiously, "What? Is Junior Marshal Brother Shao the only one from your sect who came? Junior Marshal Brother Gong and the others didn't come? Senior Marshal Brother and Senior Marshal Sister are repenting in the Tranquil Heart Cave. It's not time yet, is it? They can't leave the mountain for the time being. I, Shang Huaming, have some other matters to attend to in the mountain these days. Sect Master is busy and can't leave the mountain, so he sent me here. Please forgive me." Xiaohua said sincerely. How could Jiang Fan not know what Shang Huaming had encountered? His face was full of surprise. What kind of trouble has your sect encountered? Could it be the 10,000 Poisons sect? Do you need my 100 Herbs Gate's help? Shang Huaming and my 100 Herbs Gate are now allies. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to ask. Xiaohua smiled. It's a small matter. I Shang Huaming can deal with it easily. It's just that the matter is complicated that Sect Master can't leave. If there's a need, I'm sure Sect Master would have already sent a message. And that's true. That day my 100 Herbs Gate found some traces of the 10,000 Poisons sect and even sent a message talisman. Later, when I received your sect's reply, there was no mention of the 10,000 Poisons sect. We were worried for nothing. Jiang Fan said with a smile. Xiaohua frowned slightly. He thought for a moment and said vaguely, "Thank you for your concerns, Senior. I Shang Huaming am fine." Good. It's good that you're fine. Jiang Fan grabbed Xiaohua and flew straight to the round plate. He said, "Let's go. Fellow Taoist Xiao is a guest from afar. Let's go to the guest hall first." Xiaohua followed Jiang Fan onto the round disc. The sound of the drums had long since disappeared. Xiaohua saw Jiang Yan and once again saluted. Jiang Yan snorted and didn't even pay him any attention. He turned around and walked inside. Hee, fellow Taoist Xiao, please don't take offense. Last time this little sister had a good chat with your senior martial sister. This time I thought it was your senior martial sister who came, so I excitedly came out to welcome you. Jiang Fan said awkwardly. It's nothing. Xiaohua didn't seem to care. He smiled and said, both of you are seniors in the late qi refining stage. I'm just a junior. How can I be qualified to argue? Jiang Fan couldn't hear the sarcasm in these words. He could only laugh and point at the scenery below the flying disc to explain to Xiaohua. Medicine Farmer Peak was like Yellow Flower Ridge. It was a huge mountain range with many peaks, rivers, and forests. The scenery was naturally beautiful and varied. However, it was a bit different from Yellow Flower Ridge. Medicine Farmer Peak was in the middle of the mountain range. There were many disciples of 100 Herbs Gate, so there were many places in the mountain range that could be used. Unlike Shang Huaming, Minushi Peak was near the edge of Yellow Flower Ridge, while most of Yellow Flower Ridge was in the depths of the mountain range. Shang Huaming couldn't control it. Therefore, when Xiaohua saw the vast expanse of herb fields on Herb Farmer Peak, as well as the dense clouds and spiritual energy, he knew that the strength of 100 Herbs Gate was much greater than Shang Huaming's. Seeing Xiaohua's attention on the medicine fields, Jiang Fan slowed down the flying disc and said with a smile, disciples of 100 Herbs Gate who are below the third level of qi refining stay in the medicine fields and do the chores of cultivating spiritual herbs. Only when they reach the third level of qi refining can they truly be accepted into 100 Herbs Gate and focus on cultivation. Of course, these disciples also have their own medicine fields to cultivate the spiritual herbs they need. Then he pointed at the mountain stream in the distance and said proudly, that place is an important place of 100 Herbs Gate. Hundreds, even thousands of years old spiritual herbs are all gathered there. Oh? Absorption fruit, exquisite grass. Are they all planted there? Xiaohua asked, his heart moved. Haha, absorption fruit can be refined into pills after 30 years. Naturally, there's no need to pay too much attention to it. It's not planted there. As for exquisite grass, those that are 400 or 500 years old are naturally planted there. Jiang Fan said with a smile, but most of the spiritual herbs here are not planted. Not planted? Then how do they grow? Xiaohua asked curiously. Jiang Fan smiled and pointed in another direction of the disc, saying, fellow Taoist Xiao, look at that place. That's where 100 Herbs Gate's mid and late stage qi refining disciples cultivate. It's considered a dangerous place in Medicine Farmer Peak. Xiaohua secretly despised him. This guy is really stingy. If you want to say it, then say it. If you don't want to say it, then why do you have to mention it? Even if this is an important place of 100 Herbs Gate, the rare spiritual herbs are not planted but grown in the wild and are thousands of years old. But what are you showing off in front of me for? Humph, isn't it just 1,000-year-old exquisite grass? If this young master is happy, in 3 years I'll also grow a large field of 1,000-year-old exquisite grass for you. In another 30 years, this young master will grow a large field of 10,000-year-old exquisite grass for you so that you'll die of thirst. Xiaohua was not in the mood to listen to Jiang Fan's introduction. He muttered in his heart, this one, junior and so on, and only picked up this young master. He didn't have the bearing of a cultivator at all. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't speak, Jiang Fan was secretly happy. He thought that he had scared this little boy who hadn't seen the world. When he returned to Shanghuaming, he would tell Xiao Xinrui about his shocking experience. Unconsciously, he became eloquent again. He didn't expect that he, a 12th layer qi refining senior, would act as a guide for a 1st layer qi refining junior. 100 Herbs Gate was somewhat suspected of flattering Shang Huaming. That you're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.